Hello everyone, and welcome to the Fictional Vortex. So we are back with an interesting movie on what if Naruto was the wild sage who trained the sword princess of Orario, Naruto XXX Ryuu DanMachi. But before we start, I just want to remind you to please subscribe to my channel and hit the like button if you enjoy my content. Let's start the story. Chapter 1. The Stranger in the Forest. Mist clung to ancient pines like gossamer shrouds, transforming the forbidden forest beyond Orario's outer walls into a realm of whispers and shadows. Through this ethereal landscape, a solitary figure moved with practiced stealth, a slender girl with golden hair that caught what little sunlight penetrated the canopy above. Her amber eyes narrowed with concentra. Tian as she placed each foot deliberately, avoiding fallen branches and loose stones that might betray her presence. Ace Wallenstein had become accustomed to others underestimating her. At 15, he had already achieved level 3 as an adventurer, a prodigious accomplishment that had earned her both admiration and envy within the Loki familia. Yet despite her rapidly growing reputation, she knew the bitter truth that haunted her sleepless nights: she wasn't strong enough. Not nearly strong enough to fulfill the vow she'd made over the broken bodies of her parents. The wild sage won't be found if he doesn't wish to be. Riveria had warned her that morning, the high elf's eyes sharp with concern. These woods have claimed experienced adventurers before you, and whatever dwells within has no obligation to show mercy. Ace had merely nodded, her face a practiced mask of calm that betrayed none of the desperation churning beneath. The rumors had circulated through Orario for months now, whispers of a strange hermit with powers unlike any magic system known to gods or mortals. Some claimed he commanded elements without chanting, others insisted he could multiply himself like reflections in a fractured mirror. Most dismissed these tales as tavern fabrications, but Ace recognized the ring of truth hidden within the embellishment. Someone, or something, was out here. Something that might finally help her breach the plateau in her training. A twig snapped underfoot, the sound explosive in the preternatural silence. Ace froze, hand instinctively dropping to desperate, her sword's familiar grip offering cold comfort as she scanned her surroundings. Nothing moved except the fog, swirling lazily between tree trunks as ancient as Orario itself. "You're getting sloppy," she muttered self-reproach, resuming her trek with redoubled caution. The forest grew denser as she pressed forward, unmarked paths becoming nearly impassable as nature reclaimed territory long abandoned by civilization. Hours passed, the quality of light shifting imperceptibly as noon gave way to afternoon. Doubt began gnawing at her resolve. Perhaps she should have brought provisions for overnight, or left some sign for her familia about her destination. That's when she heard it, a sound so out of place that it halted her mid-stride. Laughter. Not the menacing cackle of monsters or the sinister chuckle of malevolent beings, but genuine, unrestrained mirth that carried through the trees like wind chimes. Ace altered her course, drawn toward the incongruous sound with the inevitability of a moth to flame. The trees thinned suddenly, revealing a small clearing bathed in dappled sunlight. At its center stood a crude but sturdy wooden cabin, smoke curling from a stone chimney in lazy spirals. A vegetable garden sprawled to one side, meticulously maintained rows of unfamiliar plants thriving despite the forest's oppressive gloom. And there, splitting logs with an axe that seemed almost comically small in his hands, was a man unlike any Ace had encountered in Orario. He stood tall, easily over 6 feet, with a wild mane of sun-kissed blonde hair that fell past broad shoulders. Dressed in CMPLE black pants and an open vest that revealed a physique honed by years of disciplined training, he moved with a fluid grace that belied his substantial muscular frame. But it was his face that captured Ace's attention. Deeply tanned and marked with 6 distinctive whisker-like scars, 3 on each cheek, it was a study in contradictions. Weather-worn lines at the corners of his eyes suggested hardship and age. Yet his expressions shifted with the unguarded openness of youth. Though she estimated him to be in his late 20s, something ancient lurked behind eyes so vividly blue they seemed to absorb the very color from the sky above. He was, Ace realized with something approaching awe, laughing at himself, having apparently missed a swing and embedded his axe in the chopping block at an awkward angle. "Well, that's just embarrassing," he muttered, running calloused fingers through his unruly hair. "Good thing Sasuke isn't here to see that. Never would have heard the end of it." His voice carried an unfamiliar accent, rolling certain syllables in ways that identified him as definitely not from Orario or any surrounding region A's knew. She shifted her weight slightly, unconscio. USLY leaning forward to better observe this strange hermit, and instantly regretted it as a dried leaf crackled beneath her boot. The change was instantaneous and terrifying. Gone was the affable woodsman. In his place stood a warrior of lethal readiness, his posture transformed to a balanced combat stance without any visible transition between states. The axe had vanished, literally disappeared, and in its place, he held a peculiar three-pronged knife in a reverse grip, his gaze locked unerringly on A's position despite the undergrowth concealing her. "I know you're there," he called, voice stripped of its earlier warmth. "Step out slowly. I've had my fill of assassination attempts." A's considered her options. Retreat seemed impossible. Something told her this man could outpace her with ease. Fighting without provocation violated her principles. With methodical calm that belied her racing heart, she straightened and emerged from cover, keeping her hands visible but within reach of her weapon. "I'm not an assassin," she stated simply, meeting his gaze without flinching. For 3 heartbeats, he studied her with an intensity that felt physical, as though his eyes could peel away layers of flesh to examine the soul beneath. Then, as abruptly as it had appeared, the knife vanished in a blur of movement too swift for even A's trained eyes to follow. His posture softened marginally, though the alertness never left his stance. "A child," he observed, surprise evident in the slight raising of his eyebrows. "Though I'm guessing not an ordinary one, given how far you've come into territory most adults avoid." A's bristled at the designation. "I'm 15, an adventurer of the Loki Familia, level 3. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "Meant no offense. Where I'm from, that would make you a seasoned warrior already." He gestured to the cabin's small porch. "Since you've come all this way, might as well tell me what brought you." "I've got tea brewing." A's hesitated, every instinct honed through years in the dungeon screaming caution. Yet something deeper, an intuition she'd learned to trust, sensed no malice from this strange man. With a slight nod, she approached, though she maintained a prudent distance. "You're him, aren't you? The wild sage that people in Orario whisper about." The man snorted, a sound caught between amusement and irritation. "Is that what they're calling me now? Creative, I'll give them that." He disappeared inside the cabin, returning moments later with 2 steaming cups. He offered one to A's before settling on the porch steps, apparently unconcerned about turning his back to an armed stranger. "Name's Naruto. Naruto Uzumaki. Not wild sage, or whatever other nonsense they're spinning in town." A's accepted the cup cautiously, noting its unfamiliar herbal aroma. Not poison. Her status provided resistance to most toxins, but she remained wary nonetheless. "A's Wallenstein," she reciprocated, taking a tentative sip. The flavor bloomed across her tongue, earthy, slightly sweet, with hints of something citrus and unfamiliar. "This isn't from any plant in Orario." Naruto's eyes crinkled with genuine pleasure. "Good palate. It's green tea with a bit of yuzu, things I've managed to cultivate here that remind me of home." A shadow flickered across his features, there and gone so quickly A's might have imagined it. "But, you didn't trek through monster-infested woods for my tea. What do you want?" A's Wallenstein of the Loki Familia. Direct approach then. A's could appreciate that. "I want you to train me." The request hung between them, stark and unembellished. Naruto didn't laugh or dismiss her outright, which A's counted as promising. Instead, he studied her with that same penetrating gaze that seemed to evaluate more than merely physical capabilities. "What makes you think I have anything to teach that your familia can't provide?" "You fight differently," she stated with absolute certainty. "No magic stones, no falna. Yet you've survived alone in territory where even groups of adventurers have perished." Naruto's expression remained neutral, but something in his posture shifted infinitesimally. "Been watching me, gathering intelligence," A's corrected. 3 separate parties have reported seeing you engage monsters with techniques unknown in Orario. You create duplicates of yourself that aren't illusions. You manipulate wind without incantations. Enough." The single word carried weight beyond its volume. Naruto set his cup aside, standing with fluid grace that reminded A's of predators she'd encountered in the dungeon's deeper floors. I'm not interested in becoming a sideshow curiosity for Orario's gods or a weapon in their endless games. Whatever you think you know. The attack came without warning. 3 massive shadows erupted from the forest's edge, moving with impossible speed for their bulk. Needle-like projectiles whistled through the air as the beasts, corrupt variants of the forest wolves that roamed these woods, converged on the cabin with coordinated precision that monsters shouldn't possess. Aza's sword cleared its sheath in a practiced motion, her body pivoting to face the nearest threat, only to find herself gently but firmly displaced as Naruto moved past her with such velocity that the air itself seemed to compress in his wake. What followed defied everything she knew about combat. Naruto didn't dodge the needle projectiles. His hands became a blur, actually catching them mid-flight before flicking them back with devastating accuracy. Chu struck the lead wolf in vital points, triggering an agonized howl as it stumbled. But the truly impossible came next. Naruto's fingers formed a series of precise configurations, too deliberate to be random yet unlike any magic gesture Ace had witnessed. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. The foreign words carried no magical resonance that Ace could detect, yet reality itself seemed to hiccup in response. With a sound like displaced air, 4 identical copies of Naruto materialized, not illusions or projections, but solid duplicates that immediately engaged the remaining wolves with coordinated efficiency. One wolf lunged at what it perceived as the weakest target, jaws gaping to reveal serrated teeth designed to shred flesh. The Naruto copy sidestepped with millimeter precision before delivering a counterattack of such focused power that Ace could hear bones shatter from 20 paces away. Another wolf found itself airborne, hoisted by 2 duplicates working in tandem before being slammed in to the earth with enough force to leave a crater. But it was the original Naruto who demonstrated the most inexplicable ability. Extending his right hand, palm upward, he created something. A's ha. No context to describe the swirling sphere of visible energy that coalesced above his open hand. Not fire, not lightning, not any elemental magic catalogued in Orario's extensive grimoires. It simply existed, a perfect orb of concentrated power that hummed with destructive potential. Rasengan, he called, driving the sphere into the chest of the lead wolf as it recovered enough to charge. The impact produced no blood, no external damage, just a moment of absolute stillness before the beast spiraled backward, its body rotating with the transferred energy until it crashed through 3 trees in succession before finally coming to rest, unmistakably dead. Silence reclaimed the clearing. The duplicates vanished in small puffs of smoke, leaving only the original Naruto standing amid evidence of a battle that had lasted less than 15 seconds. He hadn't even broken a sweat. Ace stood transfixed, her sword half raised, having not struck a single blow. In all her years delving into the dungeon's depths, she had never witnessed combat executed with such efficient perfection. Not even the most acclaimed adventurers in Orario moved with such supernatural economy of motion. Naruto turned to her, his expression unreadable. You should leave. More will come. What? Ace struggled to process everything she'd witnessed. What was that? That, Naruto replied grimly, is why I live away from Orario. He gestured toward the wolf corpses, which were already beginning to dissolve into the black ash characteristic of monster remains. Except something was different. Threads of reddish energy lingered, writhing like dying serpents before dissipating. They're changing, adapting, becoming something neither world is prepared for. Neither world, Ace echoed, her tactical mind cataloging every detail despite her confusion. Naruto sighed, suddenly looking much older than his physical appearance suggested. It's a long story, and not one I'm inclined to share with strangers, even persistent ones. He gestured toward the forest path. Go back to your familia. Tell them the woods are becoming more dangerous. Even level 3 adventurers shouldn't wander here alone. The dismissal was clear, but Ace Wallenstein hadn't survived the dungeon's depths by accepting defeat easily. She sheathed her sword in a deliberate motion and planted her feet. Teach me to fight like that, and I'll go. Naruto's laugh held no humor. You can't fight like I do. No one in Orario can. My abilities come from a different system entirely. Chakra, not magic. Without a lifetime of training to develop chakra pathways, you'd kill yourself attempting my weakest technique. Then teach me what I can learn, Ace pressed, undeterred. Adapt your knowledge to work with my magic. I don't need your specific techniques. I need your understanding of combat. Why? The question came sharp as a thrown knife. Why risk death to seek training from a hermit? The Loki Familia has veteran warriors, skilled instructors. They can't give me what I need. And what's that? Aza's amber eyes hardened, revealing the steel beneath her composed exterior. The power to kill a one-eyed black dragon. Song. Ethan flickered across Naruto's features, recognition, perhaps, of the specific breed of determination that could only be born from profound loss. For a moment, Ace thought she glimpsed understanding in those impossibly blue eyes. A shared knowledge of what it meant to be driven by something beyond rational pursuit of strength. Go home, Sword Princess, he said finally, the unexpected use of her emerging title in Orario catching her off guard. Some ghosts can't be laid to rest with more power. I've walked that path. Ace felt her chest tighten with a familiar pressure, the same suffocating sensation that accompanied her recurring nightmares of wind, blood, and a mother's final smile. You don't understand. I understand perfectly. Naruto's voice softened, losing its edge. You think vengeance will fill the void. It won't. I've seen that story play out too many times. He turned away, gathering the scattered wood he'd been chopping before her arrival. Go back to Orario. Find Song. Anything worth fighting for beyond revenge. The dismissal stung worse than any physical blow. Ace opened her mouth to protest, to explain that he was wrong, that her pursuit wasn't merely about vengeance but justice, protection. Ensuring no one else would suffer as she had. The words never came. Instead, the ground beneath them shuddered, a violent tremor that sent birds scattering from treetops in panicked clouds. Naruto's head snapped up, his attention focused eastward with sudden intensity. That came from the direction of Orario, Ace said, alarm threading through her voice. No, Naruto's expression had transformed. All traces of the easygoing hermit vanished beneath the visage of a hardened warrior. That came from deeper in the forest. From the cave system. What cave system? Instead of answering, Naruto made another series of those peculiar hand configurations, too rapid for Ace to follow. A duplicate materialized, this one somehow different, more substantial than those that had fought the wolves. Get her back to Orario, he instructed the copy. I'll investigate the disturbance. The duplicate nodded, but Ace was already backing away, hand returning to her sword hilt. I'm not leaving. If there's danger, there's always danger. Naruto cut her off. But this, he trailed off, his expression troubled. This feels familiar, like chakra being used on a massive scale. Then I'm definitely coming, Ace stated with finality. If these are the same kind of techniques you use, I need to see them. Naruto studied her for a long moment, clearly weighing options. Finally, he gave a curt nod. Stay behind me. Do exactly as I say. If I tell you to run, you run. No arguments, no heroics. Without waiting for agreement, he launched himself into the trees with a leap that carried him impossibly high. Landing on a branch that should have snapped under his weight, Ace barely managed to follow, pushing her agility stats to their limit as she raced after him through the forest canopy. They traveled for nearly 20 minutes, moving deeper into territory Ace had never explored. The forest grew stranger. Trees twisted into unnatural configurations, fauna exhibit ITING colorations not found in normal ecosystems. Naruto moved with absolute certainty, never hesitating at junctions or checking his bearings. Finally, they arrived at the mouth of a cavern partial Y concealed by enormous ferns with iridescent fronds. Naruto held up a hand, signaling for halt and silence. Ace complied, every sense straining to detect what had put the wild sage on such high alert. Something's wrong, Naruto murmured, his voice barely audible. The barrier's been breached. Barrier, Ace whispered back. Naruto made a gesture that encompassed the cave entrance. Estabilis. Head seals around this area months ago, warning systems, essentially. Something triggered them, then dismantled them with precision. That requires knowledge of Fuinjutsu, sealing techniques from my world. The implications hung heavy between them. If Naruto truly came from another world, as his cryptic comments suggested, then whatever breached his barriers might share that origin, or had somehow learned his techniques. Wait here, he instructed, forming another series of hand signs. This time, no duplicate appeared, but Naruto's appearance subtly shifted, his already keen eyes taking on a golden hue with rectangular pupils. Orange pigmentation appearing around the orbital bones. The transformation was subtle yet profound, lending him an otherworldly aspect that sent a shiver down Aza's spine. "What is that?" she couldn't help asking. "Sage mode," he replied, his voice resonating differently. "Allows me to sense chakra and natural energy at a distance." He closed these strange eyes, concentration evident in his furrowed brow. Seconds stretched into nearly a minute before his eyes snapped open, alarm evident. "We need to move, now." They descended into the cavern's depths, A's fall. Owing Naruto's lead through winding passages that gradually widened into larger chambers. The rock itself became increasingly unusual, veined with crystalline formations that emitted faint luminescence in shades of blue and green. The air grew charged, carrying an electrical quality that made the fine hairs on Aza's arms stand erect. "This place," she whispered, unable to suppress her awe, "it's not natural." "No," Naruto confirmed grimly, "it's a convergence point, a place where the membrane between worlds grows thin. I discovered it 6 months ago while tracking unusual monster activities. They emerged into a vast chamber that defied the laws of nature. The ceiling soared hundreds of feet overhead, impossibly high for their location relative to the surface. Enormous crystal formations jutted from walls and floor, each pulsing with inner light that shifted through spectrums as if responding to unseen rhythms. At the chamber's center stood a structure that resembled no architecture Iz had ever encountered, a perfect circle of stone pillars inscribed with symbols that hurt her eyes when she tried to focus on them directly. But what truly captured her attention was the figure kneeling within that circle. Hands pressed against a central altar that glowed with sickly purple light. Even from a distance, Az could tell the figure wasn't human, despite its humanoid form. Its proportions were subtly wrong. Limbs too long, joints articulating in impossible directions, skin the pallid white of something that had never known sunlight. It wore tattered garments that might once have been ceremonial robes, now reduced to little more than rags that revealed glimpses of a body covered in what appeared to be script, living characters that crawled across its flesh like insects. Naruto's reaction was immediate and visceral. His body tensed, an involuntary step backward betraying shock that bordered on denial. "Impossible," he breathed, the single word laden with horror. "It can't be." The figure's head snapped up with unnatural swiftness, revealing a face that wasn't a face at all, merely a smooth expanse of flesh with 5 small, vertical eyes arranged in a pattern that triggered some primal revulsion in Aza's mind. Those eyes fixed on Naruto, and the creature's body convulsed with what might have been pleasure or recognition. "Uzumaki." The voice emerged without the creature opening any discernible mouth, resonating directly in Aza's mind with the texture of rotting velvet. "Fragment of the sage, we have waited." Naruto stepped forward, placing himself between Az and the abomination. "What are you?" he demanded, though his tone suggested he already feared the answer. The creature rose, its movement a horrifying parody of human locomotion. "We are the Harbinger, the Bridge Maker, the Eye of Kagaya that sees between worlds." It gestured toward the altar, where complex patterns of light continued to pulse and shift. "The convergence progresses. Soon, the goddess will walk again." Az had never seen true fear on Naruto's face until that moment. Not concern or caution, but genuine dread that drained color from his tanned features. "Kagaya is sealed," he stated with forced conviction. "Sasuke and I made sure of that. This is impossible." The creature's body rippled with silent laughter. "The seal holds her primary consciousness, yes. But divinity cannot be truly contained. Fragments escaped, scattered across dimensions. I am but one such fragment, drawn to this world by the resonance of your chakra." It tilted its head at an angle no spine should permit. "Did you think your arrival here was accident? The rift opened because you were needed." Az stepped forward, unable to remain passive despite the overwhelming sense that she was witnessing something beyond her comprehension. "What is it talking about? Who is Kagaya?" The creature's 5 eyes swiveled toward her with hungry interest. "The mortal speaks. How delightful. Perhaps we shall use this one as the first vessel." "Touch her and die," Naruto snarled, killing intent radiating from him in waves so tangible that Az felt her knees weaken. "Whatever you're planning ends now." Without warning, Naruto launched himself at the creature, moving faster than Az had seen even during the wolf attack. His fist, suddenly wreathed in golden energy that resembled flame without burning, struck the abomination square in its featureless face with enough force to shatter stone. The creature didn't dodge. It simply rippled, its form becoming momentarily insubstantial as Naruto's attack passed through it harmlessly. Before he could recover, tentacle-like appendages erupted from the creature's torso, whipping toward Naruto with lethal intent. What followed was combat unlike anything in Aiza's experience. Naruto created dozens of duplicates that attacked from all angles, each displaying different abilities, some wielding swirling energy spheres, others manipulating what appear to be elemental forces without any magic circle or incantation. The creature countered with impossible physical transformations, its body reshaping itself to meet each threat. Aiza wasn't content to merely observe. Drawing desperate, she charged into the fray, targeting what appeared to be the creature's blind spots. Her first strike connected, blade biting deep into shifting flesh that parted like liquid before reconstituting around her sword, nearly trapping it. Aiza, back off, Naruto shouted, genuine alarm in his voice. Its body absorbs magical energy. Too late. Aiza felt a sickening pull as the creature began draining her sword's enchantment, the wind magic infused in the blade transferring to its attacker. With a desperate heave, she tore desperate free, the effort costing her precious seconds of defensive awareness. The counterattack came with blinding speed, a tentacle lashing toward her heart with unerring accuracy. Aiza knew instantly she couldn't dodge completely, could only twist to ensure the strike wouldn't be immediately fatal. A flash of gold interposed itself. Naruto, wreathed in brilliant energy that shaped itself into what appeared to be a massive spectral fox around his body, caught the tentacle bare-handed. The appendage sizzled against his golden aura, unable to penetrate what Aiza instinctively recognized as power beyond anything in Orario's magical systems. Run, he commanded, voice overlaid with a deeper, more bestial tone. Get back to Orario. Warn them. I won't leave you. Aiza protested, regaining her stance. The creature chittered with that unsettling mental laughter again. How touching. The mortal has attached itself to you, sage fragment. Perhaps there is more resonance here than anticipated. Naruto growled, an inhuman sound that reverberated through the chamber. Enough talk. Whatever you're doing with that altar stops now. He formed a complex sequence of hand signs, culminating in a deep breath that expanded his chest beyond normal human capacity. When he exhaled, it wasn't air but a massive gout of flame that erupted toward the creature and its altar, the heat so intense that Aiza had to shield her face despite being dozens of paces away. The fire engulfed the creature and the central platform, obscuring both in a maelstrom of orange and white. For a moment, Aiza dared hope the simple solution had worked, but as the flames receded, the altar stood unmarred, protected by a hemispherical barrier of purple energy. The creature remained within, unharmed, its posture suggesting amusement. Fire release. How nostalgic. It gestured languidly, and the barrier expanded outward in a shockwave that slammed into both Naruto and Aiza, sending them skidding backward. Naruto recovered instantly, his golden aura intensifying. Fine, let's see how you handle this. Energy began condensing above his outstretched palm, similar to the swirling sphere he'd used against the wolf, but vastly more complex, incorporating what appeared to be 4 distinct elemental signatures that orbited a central core. The creature observed the technique with its 5 unsettling eyes, head tilting with apparent curiosity. The Rasenshuriken. Impressive that you still command such techniques without the Kyuubi's full cooperation. You talk too much, Naruto replied, compressing the swirling mass further until it emitted a sound like 1,000 chirping birds. With a grunt of effort, he hurled the technique, not directly at the creature, but at the ceiling above the altar. The impact was cataclysmic. The Rasenshuriken expanded upon contact, transforming into a perfect sphere of destructive energy that disintegrated everything within its radius. Massive crystal formations and tons of bedrock collapsed, burying the altar and the creature beneath an avalanche of debris. The chamber shuddered, secondary collapses triggering throughout its vast expanse. Naruto grabbed Aiza's arm without ceremony, his golden aura extending to encompass her as he bounded toward the exit with inhuman speed. Was that enough? Aiza asked as they raced through collapsing tunnels, debris bouncing harmlessly off Naruto's protective energy. Not even close, he replied grimly. But it buys us time. They emerged into daylight just as the cavern entrance imploded behind them, a final shudder running through the ground before stillness returned to the forest. Naruto's golden aura faded, revealing exhaustion that hadn't been apparent while the energy sustained him. He leaned heavily against a tree trunk, breathing labored. "What was that thing?" Aiz demanded, sheathing her sword. "You knew it, or at least what it represented." Naruto's gaze remained fixed on the collapsed cave entrance, as though expecting the creature to burst forth at any moment. "A fragment of someone I hoped never to encounter again. A goddess from my world who nearly destroyed everything." He straightened with visible effort. "And if even a piece of her has found its way here, your world is in grave danger." "Our world," Aiz corrected quietly. "You're here now, regardless of where you came from." Something in Naruto's expression shifted, a subtle softening around eyes that had witnessed more suffering than anyone should endure. For a moment, Aiz glimpsed vulnerability beneath the hardened exterior, a longing for connection that resonated with her own carefully guarded isolation. "How did you come to be here?" she asked, gentler than her usual direct manner. "If you're truly from another world." Naruto sighed, glancing skyward as though searching for answers in the patches of blue visible between swaying branches. "It happened during the Fourth Great Ninja War, the final battle against Kagaya Otsutsuki, the rabbit goddess. My friend Sasuke and I were the only ones capable of sealing her away permanently. We nearly succeeded, but in her desperation, she tore open dimensional rifts, trying to escape into other realms." His gaze grew distant, lost in memories of a reality Aiz could scarcely imagine. "I pursued her through one such rift, determined not to let her threaten another world. Sasuke managed to complete the sealing from our side, but the dimensional passage collapsed before I could return." A rueful smile touched his lips. "I arrived here 3 years ago, weak and disoriented, in the middle of that forest. Took me months to recover enough chakra to function normally. And you've been searching for a way home ever since," Aiz concluded. "At first," Naruto acknowledged. "But time passes differently between dimensions. For all I know, decades have passed in my world. Everyone I knew could be." He left the thought unfinished. "Besides, I discovered something more pressing. Monsters in this world that began exhibiting chakra-like abilities. Signs that something from my reality was influencing yours." The creature mentioned convergence, Aiz recalled. "A merging of worlds." Naruto nodded grimly. "The dungeon you have in Orario, it's not just a hole in the ground. It's a dimensional anomaly, similar to the rifts Kagaya created but naturally occurring and stable. I believe that fragment of Kagaya has been using it, converting monsters to create a bridge between our worlds." The implications chilled Aiz to her core. "If that's true, Orario needs to know." "Would they believe you?" Naruto countered. "A tale of other worlds, brought by a 15-year-old adventurer. Even with your reputation, the gods would dismiss it as fantasy." He wasn't wrong. Even within the Loki familia, few would accept such an outlandish explanation without proof. Loki herself might believe. The trickster goddess had an uncanny instinct for truth, but convincing others would prove nearly impossible. "Then you have to come with me," Aiz insisted. "Show them what you showed me. Your abilities would prove." "My abilities would make me a curiosity at best, a weapon to be claimed at worst," Naruto interrupted. "The gods Orario would see me as either a threat or a prize. Neither serves our purpose." "Then what do we do?" Frustration edged Aiz's voice. "If this Kagaya fragment is as dangerous as you believe, we can't face it alone." Naruto fell silent, internal conflict evident in his troubled expression. Finally, he straightened, decision crystallizing in his eyes. "We prepare," he stated with quiet certainty. "I'll teach you." Aiz blinked, momentarily thrown by the abrupt reversal. "Teach me? You said my body couldn't handle your techniques." "Not my specific jutsu, no. But the principles behind them, chakra control, nature manipulation, tactical application, those can be adapted to work with your magic system." He studied her with new intensity. "You wanted training. Now you'll get it, but not for the reasons you initially sought." "To kill the black dragon," Aiz reminded him stubbornly. Naruto shook his head. "To save your world from mine. The dragon will have to wait." Under different circumstances, Aiz might have argued. Her vengeance had defined her existence for so long that postponing it seemed unthinkable. Yet the memory of that otherworldly creature, its 5 vertical eyes and the casual malevolence it exuded, provided perspective that even her obsession couldn't dismiss. "When do we start?" she asked instead. Naruto glanced toward Orario, barely visible as a distant silhouette through gaps in the forest canopy. "You return to your familia today. Tell them you got lost, found nothing of consequence. Come back tomorrow at dawn, alone. Tell no one what you've seen or what I've told you. They'll notice changes in my fighting style eventually," Ace pointed out pragmatically. "By then, it won't matter." Naruto's expression grew somber. "Events are accelerating. That cave in bought us weeks at most before the Kagaya fragment reconstructs its physical form. After that, he left the implications unspoken." Ace nodded, accepting the gravity of their situation. As she turned to leave, a question surfaced, one that had nagged at her since witnessing his extraordinary abilities. "The golden energy that surrounded you during battle, what was that?" Naruto's expression shifted subtly, something ancient and decidedly non-human flickering behind his eyes. "That's a complicated story for another time. Let's just say I'm not entirely alone, even in this world." Before Ace could press further, movement caught her peripheral vision, a shadow detaching itself from the forest's edge, approaching with silent grace that few could achieve. Ace's hand dropped to her sword automatically, but Naruto remained relaxed, suggesting the newcomer posed no threat. As the figure emerged into clearer view, Ace found herself assessing a female elf with striking features and calculating emerald eyes that missed nothing. Her clothing marked her as an adventurer, though she wore no obvious familia insignia. Most notably, she carried a staff of unusual design, clearly magical but unlike standard Orario craftsmanship. "You've been busy, Uzumaki," the elf remarked dryly, her accent suggesting origins far beyond Orario's borders. The tremors were felt as far as the eastern farmlands. "Unavoidable circumstances," Naruto replied with casual familiarity that surprised Ace. "Nothing that should concern the guild." The elf's gaze shifted to Ace, evaluating with clinical precision. "Ace Wallenstein, your familia has been searching for you since midday. Quite the commotion in Orario." "You know me?" Ace asked cautiously. A smile ghosted across the elf's austere features. Quote, "I make it my business to know all significant adventurers. Especially those who venture where they shouldn't." Her attention returned to Naruto. "The convergence is accelerating, isn't it? Your little cave expedition confirmed my suspicions." Naruto's eyebrows rose fractionally. "You've been monitoring the energy fluctuations." "For months," the elf confirmed. "Though I lacked context until now." She gestured toward Ace. "Does she know?" "Enough," Naruto answered cryptically. "More than most." The elf nodded, apparently satisfied. "Then perhaps it's time we formalized our collaboration, Uzumaki. Individual efforts will no longer suffice." Ace watched this exchange with growing curiosity. "Who are you?" she finally asked directly. The elf inclined her head in acknowledgement of the question's validity. "Ilga Vandal, historian, researcher, and one of the few in Orario old enough to remember the last time worlds threatened to collide." Her emerald eyes hardened, though the signs were different then. Less directed. "Ilga has been providing me information about Orario's history and magic systems," Naruto explained to Ace. "In exchange for insights about chakra and its potential applications." A mutually beneficial arrangement, Ilga agreed smoothly. "Though I believe circumstances now demand we expand our circle of trust." She fixed Ace with a penetrating stare. "The Sword Princess could be a valuable ally, provided she understands the true stakes. I've agreed to train her," Naruto said, drawing a sharp glance from the elf. "Have you now? That's a significant departure from your previous stance." Ilga's tone suggested layers of meaning Ace couldn't decipher. "What changed your mind?" Rather than answer directly, Naruto gestured toward the collapsed cave entrance. "She's seen enough to understand the threat. And she has potential that could prove useful." High praise from the wild sage, Ilga observed with faint amusement. To Ace, she added, "He's Ryuu. CTED 17 potential students since arriving in our world. Consider yourself exceptional." Ace absorbed this information silently, reassessing her initial encounter with Naruto. Had his reluctance been genuine, or merely testing her resolve? The question remained unanswered as Ilga continued. "Your familia will expect explanations for your absence," the elf told Ace. I suggest keeping them simple and believable. The fewer who know about our concerns at this stage, the better. They'll worry if I disappear for training regularly, Ace pointed out practically. Leave that to me, Ilga replied. I have connections within the guild that can arrange a cover story, perhaps a specialized training assignment or research expedition. Something that explains periodic absences without raising suspicion. Naruto nodded approval. That would help. The last thing we need is Loki herself getting curious. The mention of her goddess sent a pang of guilt through A's. Deception didn't come naturally to her. Her reputation for straightforwardness was well established within the familia. Yet she recognized the necessity of discretion in this unprecedented situation. I should return before they organize a full search party, she acknowledged reluctantly. Dawn tomorrow, Naruto reminded her. Come prepared for intensive training. A's nodded, committing the instruction to memory. With a respectful inclination of her head toward Ilga, she turned and began making her way back toward Orario, mind racing with implications of everything she'd witnessed and learned. Behind her, fragments of conversation carried on the forest breeze, Naruto and Ilga discussing containment protocols and energy signatures in tones too low to fully discern. One phrase, however, reached her with perfect clarity. She's the key, Ilga. I've seen it. The significance of those words would haunt Aza's thoughts throughout her return journey, adding yet another layer to the mystery surrounding the wild sage of Orario. Sunset painted Orario's white stone buildings in hues of amber and gold, lengthening shadows across streets that buzzed with the usual evening activities. Adventurers returning from the dungeon congregated around favorite taverns, exchanging stories of the day's exploits while merchants closed shop and families gathered for evening meals. None of this registered with Naruto, as he moved across rooftops with practiced silence, his presence unnoticed by the city's inhabitants below. 3 years in this world had done little to diminish his shinobi training, if anything, constant vigilance required by his self-appointed mission had honed his stealth capabilities beyond even Anbu standards. He paused atop the guild's imposing headquarters, crouching in a shadow cast by an ornamental gargoyle as he surveyed the streets below. Ilga had departed for her own mysterious errands, leaving him to conduct reconnaissance alone, a task he preferred handling personally despite the efficiency his shadow clones could provide. The encounter with Ace Wallenstein had complicated matters significantly. Not that he regretted the decision to train her, the girl possessed exceptional natural talent and a determination that reminded him painfully of his younger self. But revealing the truth about his origins, even partially, represented a calculated risk that went against 3 years of careful anonymity. You're overthinking this, Naruto, a deep voice rumbled through his consciousness. The girl was going to discover the truth eventually, given her persistence. Naruto suppressed a smile. Despite their dimensional displacement, his bond with the Nine Tails remained intact, though significantly altered by their shared experiences. Not overthinking, Kurama, just cautious, he replied internally. Orario operates under different rules than our world. Gods walk the streets here, toy with mortals for amusement. Getting their attention is the last thing we need. The fox's skepticism radiated through their mental link. Yet you agreed to train the Sword Princess, a direct disciple of one of this world's most powerful and unpredictable deities. You felt it too, Naruto countered. The resonance when she fought. Her magic system responds to natural energy in ways the others don't. She might be capable of developing something close to sage mode with proper guidance. Kurama's mental equivalent of a snort conveyed his opinion clearly. A convenient justification for what was ultimately a decision made from sentiment. She reminds you of yourself, and of the Uchiha. Naruto didn't bother denying the observation. The parallels between Aza's vengeance-driven motivations and Sasuke's darkest periods were uncomfortably obvious. Perhaps that's precisely why he'd agreed to train her. The opportunity to prevent another gifted youth from being consumed by revenge represented a form of atonement for his greatest failure. His contemplation was interrupted by movement below, a familiar golden-haired figure walking purposefully through the gathering dusk, her sword sheathed at her side, an expression characteristically impassive. Ace had changed into her standard Loki Familia attire, presumably to support whatever explanation she'd provided for her day's absence. She moved with the unconscious grace of a natural warrior, her situational awareness evident in subtle adjustments to her path that avoided collisions with distracted pedestrians. Yet beneath that composed exterior, Naruto detected signs of the day's emotional impact, slight tension in her shoulders. Fingers occasionally brushing her sword hilt in reflexive reassurance. She's handling it better than most would, he murmured, impressed despite himself. Trauma creates resilience, Kurama observed dispassionately. Her status updates suggest extensive combat experience despite her youth. Not unlike your generation during the war. The comparison wasn't comforting. Yuto had hoped to find a world free from the cycles of violence that had defined shinobi existence, yet Orario's dungeon-centered economy created its own brutal paradigm, children routinely sent into deadly combat. Their gods measuring success in survival rates and status increases rather than emotional well-being. His attention shifted as Ace turned toward an imposing structure that dominated its section of the city, Twilight Manor. Headquarters of the Loki Familia. Even from this distance, Naruto could sense the magical fortifications surrounding the compound, layers of protection accumulated through generations of successful adventuring. We should go, he decided, straightening from his crouch. Dawn comes early, and we have preparations to make if training begins tomorrow. The seal modifications, Kurama inquired. Among other things, Naruto confirmed, beginning his journey back toward the forest with the effortless roof hopping that had become second nature during his shinobi career. Adapting chakra principles to work with her fauna will require experimenting with conversion matrices I haven't fully tested. Reckless, the fox commented, though without genuine criticism. But necessary. Given our timeline, the Kagaya fragment will reconstitute faster than you've estimated. Naruto's expression hardened as he cleared Orario's outer wall with a chakra-enhanced leap, landing silently in the scrubland that separated city from forest. Then we'd better work quickly. Twilight Manor's great hall bustled with evening activity, adventurers gathered in familiar groups as they shared meals and recounted the day's exploits. Ace navigated through the controlled chaos with practiced ease, acknowledging greetings with minimal nods while making her way toward a specific table where familiar faces awaited. There she is. Chiona Hiryudi's enthusiastic voice carried across intervening conversations. The Amazon waved energetically, nearly upending Lefia's drink in the process. We were about to organize a search party. That won't be necessary, Ace replied, settling onto the bench beside Riveria, whose penetrating gaze suggested she wasn't entirely convinced by the casual response. You've been gone all day, the high elf observed neutrally. Did your forest expedition prove fruitful? Ace considered her response carefully, conscious of the half-truths she must now maintain. Not in the way I expected, she finally answered, technically honest while concealing the most significant details. In other words, you didn't find your mysterious wild sage. Bet Loga snorted from across the table, fangs visible in his mocking grin. Told you it was just tavern talk. Rather than engage with the werewolf's provocations, Ace reached for a bread roll, using the motion to hide momentary uncertainty. The forest holds many secrets. One day wasn't enough to explore thoroughly. Well, you picked an interesting day to be absent, Fin Diemny remarked. The prum captain's thoughtful expression suggesting deeper considerations than his light tone conveyed. There was an earth tremor felt throughout the city around midday. Quite significant. No. CKED items from shelves in the market district. Ace maintained her composure with effort, recalling the cave collapse that had followed Naruto's devastating attack. I felt nothing in the forest, she lied directly. Discomfort at the deception masked behind her habitual reserve. Perhaps you were too focused on your hunt, Riveria suggested, her tone indicating she wasn't entirely satisfied with Ace's account but wouldn't press further in public. Chion leaned forward, changing the subject with deliberate casualness. Speaking of hunts, there's talk of organizing an expedition to the 24th floor. Apparently, unusual monster activity has been reported by returning parties. Unusual how? Ace asked, genuine curiosity temporarily displacing her preoccupation with the day's revelations. Coordinated tactics, Finn supplied, his expression growing serious. Ambush patterns too sophisticated for normal monster behavior. The guild has requested our assessment. The implications sent a chill through Ace. recalling Naruto's warnings about monsters developing abnormal abilities due to the dimensional convergence. Could the effects already be manifesting within the dungeon itself? When would this expedition depart? She inquired, mentally calculating how it might conflict with the training Naruto had proposed. Not for several days, Finn assured her. Preparations are still underway. I assume you'll want to participate. Before Ace could respond, a guild messenger appeared at the hall entrance, scanning the assembled adventurers before spotting their table and approaching with purpose. Ace Wallenstein. The messenger extended a sealed parchment bearing the guild's official stamp. Priority communication for you. Curious gazes followed as Ace accepted the document with measured composure, breaking the seal to reveal elegant script that she immediately recognized as Ilga Vandal's handwriting. Your request for specialized training in wind affinity combat techniques has been approved. Report to the Eastern Research Division at dawn tomorrow for initial assessment and equipment allocation. A 3-week program has been authorized by your familia leadership, with alternating days of instruction and independent practice. Discretion regarding methodology is required per guild research protocols. Asterisk. Ilga Vandal, Magical Research Division. Ace folded the document carefully, impressed by the historian's efficiency in establishing their cover story. The communication's official nature and specific details would withstand casual scrutiny, while the mention of authorization preemptively addressed potential objections from her familia. Good news, Riveria inquired, one elegant eyebrow raised in question. A training opportunity, Ace replied, allowing a hint of genuine enthusiasm to color her typically reserved tone. Specialized instruction in wind manipulation techniques. Finn's expression registered mild surprise. The guild's Research H division rarely offers direct combat training to adventurers. This must be quite specialized indeed. Ilga Vandal arranged it, Ace explained, offering the parchment for his inspection. She Bilai. Vase my wind affinity could be developed further with proper guidance. The Prum captain studied the document briefly before returning it with a thoughtful nod. Interesting. The timing seems fortuitous, given our upcoming expedition. Enhanced wind techniques could prove valuable in the deeper floors. Ace nodded agreement, silently grateful for the unexpected alignment of her cover story with familia objectives. That was my thought as well. As conversation shifted to other topics, Ace found her thoughts returning to the events in the forest clearing, to swirling spheres of concentrated energy. Perfect clones that fought with coordinated precision, and eyes that transformed from cerulean blue to golden sage marks. Tomorrow would begin her journey into understanding these extraordinary abilities, adapting them to enhance her own pursuit of strength. Yet beneath her anticipation lurked disquiet. The creature in the cave had recognized Naruto instantly, had spoken of gods and convergence with terrible certainty. Whatever power had brought the wild sage to Orario was stirring again, threatening both his world and hers with consequences neither fully understood. As she absently responded to Tiona's enthusiastic questions about her training schedule, Ace's resolve crystallized into something beyond her lifelong quest for vengeance against the Black Dragon. For the first time since childhood, she found herself driven by purpose that transcended personal loss, a commitment to protect not just those she cared for, but an entire world that stood unknowing at the threshold of interdimensional threat. Dawn couldn't come quickly enough. Chapter 1 End Chapter 2, Reluctant Teacher. Dawn painted the eastern horizon in watercolor strokes of amber and rose, dew-laden grass bending beneath Ace Wallenstein's purposeful strides as she navigated the forest path with practiced stealth. Sleep had proven elusive the previous night, her mind replaying fragments of impossible combat, golden aura, multiplying bodies, and energy that defied Orario's established magical principles. When slumber finally claimed her, dreams followed of a creature with 5 vertical eyes speaking of convergence between worlds. She had departed Twilight Manor before the first kitchen staff stirred, leaving a brief note confirming her guild training assignment. The explanation would suffice for most of her familia. Only Riveria might harbor suspicions about the sudden arrangement, but the High Elf's discretion could be counted upon. The forest had transformed overnight, or perhaps Ace simply perceived it differently now. Where yesterday she had seen only obstacles and potential monster habitats, today she recognized subtle patterns, certain trees bearing nearly invisible markings at precise intervals. Undergrowth arranged too uniformly for natural growth, branches positioned to channel movement along specific paths. The wild sage had modified his territory with methodical precision, creating a labyrinth that guided the unwelcome away from his sanctuary while providing him countless defensive advantages. Ace paused, orienting herself by the rising sun filtering through eastern branches. She had memorized the route to Naruto's cabin, yet something felt wrong. Landmarks she recalled had shifted, distances seemed altered. A test of some kind. Or had the environment itself changed overnight? A flutter of movement above caught her attention. A small origami bird hovering at eye level, its paper wings beating with impossible animation. As she watched, the construct circled her once BEF. Or darting forward along a path that diverged from her intended route. Ace hesitated only momentarily before following. The paper messenger's presence confirmed her suspicion. Naruto had relocated since yesterday's encounter, abandoning his previous dwelling after its security had been compromised. The construct led her through increasingly unfamiliar territory where vegetation displayed subtle anomalies, flowers bearing colors not native to Orario's ecosystem, vines with patterns reminiscent of written symbols, trees that seemed to bend slightly away as she passed. 20 minutes of brisk travel brought her to a clearing different from yesterday's, this one perfectly circular, as though carved from the forest with geometric precision. At its center stood not a cabin but a modest two-store structure combining architectural elements Ace couldn't place, curved roof tiles suggesting Eastern influence, foundation stonework reminiscent of ancient ruins south of Orario, yet with doorways and windows arranged in proportions that seemed subtly wrong, as though designed for someone of different physical dimensions than humans. The origami bird dissolved into ordinary paper that drifted to the ground as Naruto emerged from the structure. He wore different attire today, black pants and sandals similar to yesterday, but his upper body now covered by a rust-orange sleeveless tunic with unfamiliar script embroidered along its hem. A headband with a metal plate bearing a stylized leaf symbol held back his unruly blonde hair. "You're prompt," he observed, expression neutral as he assessed her preparedness. "I half expected you to reconsider after yesterday's revelations." Ace met his gaze evenly. "Reconsideration would be a luxury we don't have, given what I witnessed." Something approximating approval flickered across his features. "Fair enough. The Kagaya fragment won't grant us the same luxury." He gestured toward the structure behind him. "This is my actual residence. The cabin was merely an observation post. Few have seen this place." The implied trust wasn't lost on Ace. "You relocated everything overnight. Shadow clones make moving efficient," Naruto replied with a casual shrug that belied the extraordinary implication that he had created enough solid duplicates to relocate an entire household in hours. He led her toward a side yard where various training implements stood arranged in precise formation, wooden posts wrapped in straw, targets at varying distances, and several apparatus Ace didn't recognize. A weapons rack held an assortment of unfamiliar blades and projectiles alongside what appeared to be training versions of the same tools. "Before we begin," Naruto stated, turning to face her directly, "I need to understand your current capabilities. Your status as a level 3 adventurer tells me you're significantly stronger than average humans in my world, but doesn't clarify which attributes your fauna has prioritized or how your magic manifests." Ace considered how best to explain Orario's system to someone from another reality. "My status focuses primarily on strength, agility, and endurance, with secondary development in dexterity and magic. My primary magic is aerial, wind-based manipulation that enhances my sword techniques and provides limited ranged capabilities." Naruto nodded thoughtfully. "Show me this aerial. Target that center post." Ace unsheathed desperate in a fluid motion that spoke of countless hours perfecting the draw. She extended her free hand toward the designated target, focusing magical energy with practiced concentration. "Awaken, Tempest." Wind gathered around her blade, visible distortions in the air currents responding to her will as she directed a concentrated burst toward the practice post. The attack struck with precision, wood splintering along predictable fracture lines as compressed air cut several inches deep. Naruto circled the damaged site, examining it with critical attention to detail. "Interesting. Your magic forms a direct manifestation rather than requiring complicated incantations." He gestured for her to continue. "What else?" For the next 30 minutes, Ace demonstrate her full combat repertoire, Sword techniques developed through years of dungeon exploration, specialized maneuvers designed to counter specific monster types, defensive capabilities and tactical approach. Ocha's she had refined through experience. Throughout her demonstration, Naruto observed with unsettling intensity, occasionally requesting she repeat certain movements or explain particular choices. Enough, he finally declared, arms crossed as he processed what he'd witnessed. Your foundation is solid. Better than I expected, honestly. But your approach has fundamental limitations. The SS meant stung despite its measured delivery. Explain. You fight reactively, Naruto elaborated, moving to stand before her. Your techniques are polished responses to anticipated threats, effective against monsters whose patterns you've studied, but potentially inadequate against opponents who can adapt mid-combat. He gestured toward her sword. Your magic augments your weapon, but doesn't truly integrate with your physical capabilities. It remains a separate system rather than an extension of yourself. The observation struck uncomfortably close to truths Ace had sensed but never articulated. Her progress had indeed plateaued recently, each status update showing diminishing returns despite intensified training. Can you teach me to integrate them? She asked, direct as always. Naruto sighed, running a hand through his hair with an expression of conflicted resignation. That's the problem. Our systems are fundamentally different. In my world, chakra represents the natural integration of physical and spiritual energy. Every technique inherently combines both aspects because that's how our power manifests. He paced a short circuit, organizing his thoughts. Your world separates them, physical development through your fauna status, magical capability through a distinct system. They complement each other but remain discrete. Yet you believe I can learn from your methods, Ace pressed. Undeterred by theoretical obstacles. Otherwise, this conversation would be pointless. A reluctant smile tugged at Naruto's mouth. Persistent, aren't you? The expression faded to seriousness. Yes, I think adaptation is possible. Not directly translating my techniques, but developing analogous approaches using your system. He moved to a clear area, motioning for Ace to join him. First lesson. Understanding the fundamental principle behind all my abilities, chakra circulation. Naruto formed a hand sign, fingers interlocked in a specific configuration. In my world, this helps focus chakra. For you, it would be meaningless physically, but the mental discipline might help conceptualize what I'm describing. Ace mimicked the gesture, feeling slightly foolish but committed to the exercise. Chakra flows through specific pathways in the body, Naruto explained, his tone shifting to that of experienced instructor. By directing this flow, concentrating it in particular regions or expelling it in controlled bursts, we achieve various effects. The closest analog in your world might be how adventurers learn to channel their status enhancements to specific muscle groups during specialized actions. He demonstrated a simple movement, a punch that carried far more power than its modest execution suggested. When I throw this strike, I'm not just using physical strength. I'm circulating chakra to reinforce muscles, tendons, and bones simultaneously while also expelling a precise amount at the moment of impact. Like wind enhancement on a blade, Ace suggested, seeking familiar reference points. Similar concept, broader application, Naruto corrected. Your wind enhancement remains external, something applied to your weapon. What I'm describing permeates your entire body, enhancing every aspect simultaneously. For the next hour, he guided her through exercises designed to increase awareness of her body's energy flows, breathing techniques borrowed from sage training. Visualization methods that helped identify subtle distinctions in how magical power moved through different anatomical regions. Progress proved frustratingly slow. Orario's magic resisted the kind of internalized circulation Naruto described, responding instead to specific mental triggers associated with established spells. This isn't working, Ace finally stated, frustration evident. And despite her typically composed demeanor, Naruto studied her with narrowed eyes, considering alternatives. Maybe we're approaching this backward. Instead of trying to make your magic work like chakra, let's examine how your fauna enhancements function. He gestured toward her back, where the goddess Loki's blessing resided. The status updates you receive, they permanently enhance your physical capabilities, correct? Ace nodded. Each level increase represents a quantum leap in basic attributes. Within each level, smaller incremental improvements accumulate through experience. And the say enhancements become unconscious. You don't actively channel them, they're simply your new baseline, Naruto mused, a concept forming. Yet during intense combat, adventurers often describe moments when they exceed even those enhanced parameters. The liminal state, A's confirmed. When survival instinct pushes beyond established limits. Naruto snapped his fingers, eyes brightening with realization. That's our bridge. That liminal state represents your system's version of active chakra enhancement. He approached with renewed purpose. New exercise. I want you to recall the most intense combat situation you've experienced, a moment when you exceeded your known capabilities because you had no alternative. Ace closed her eyes, memory immediately providing the requested scenario, a day. Hurried battle on the 24th floor, separated from her party, surrounded by enhanced species variants with her magic reserves depleted. She had survived through something beyond normal skill, a perfect synchronization of mind and body that lasted precisely as long as necessary. I have it, she murmured, the recollection vivid enough to accelerate her heartbeat. Good. Now, without moving physically, I want you to recreate the sensations you experienced in that moment, the precise way your muscles tensed, how your senses heightened, the quality of awareness that accompanied the state. The request presented an unexpected challenge. A's had experienced the phenomenon but never attempted to deconstruct it consciously, allowing it to manifest instinctively when circumstances demanded. Minutes passed as she struggled to isolate the physiological components, sweat beading on her forehead despite physical stillness. Finally, she managed to capture a fragment, the distinctive sensatio N of heightened proprioception that had allowed her to track multiple opponents simultaneously. There's something, she reported, a specific quality of spatial awareness that differs from normal combat states. Focus on that sensation, Naruto instructed, voice lowered to avoid disrupting her concentration. See if you can intensify it deliberately, direct it toward specific sensory channels. A's complied, discovering to her surprise that the state could indeed be manipulated with sufficient focus. As she directed enhanced awareness toward her auditory perception, ambient sounds sharpen. Dramatically, bird calls previously at the threshold of hearing became distinct, the subtle movements of forest creatures registered with unprecedented clarity. It's working, she whispered, maintaining concentration with effort. I can enhance specific senses by directing the state's focus. Excellent, Naruto approved. You've found your entry point. What your world calls the liminal state, mine would recognize as rudimentary chakra manipulation, directing enhanced energy toward specific functions. He waited until she opened her eyes before continuing. That's enough for today. This technique requires gradual development. Pushing too far risks exhaustion or worse. We don't have time for gradual development, A's countered, characteristic determination asserting itself. The fragment will reconstitute within weeks. By your own estimation, Naruto's expression hardened, and you'll be useless against it if you damage your foulness pathways through reckless acceleration. This isn't ordinary training. We're essentially creating a hybrid technique that bridges two magical systems. Patience isn't optional. It's mandatory. The rebuke landed with sufficient authority that A's nodded reluctant acceptance. Tomorrow. Then, tomorrow, Naruto confirmed. Practice maintaining that enhanced perceptual state in short intervals today, no more than 5 minutes at a stretch, with at least 30 minutes rest between attempts. Focus exclusively on sensory enhancement. We'll address physical applications after your system adapts to the basics. He escorted her to the clearing's edge, providing additional instructions for her independent practice while extracting a promise to maintain secrecy regarding their arrangement. As Ace prepared to depart, a question that had lingered since yesterday resurfaced. The elf who met us after the cave, Ilga Vandal. You trust her? Naruto considered before answering. As much as I trust anyone in this world. She has her own agenda, certainly. But it aligns with preventing catastrophic dimensional convergence. She seemed unusually knowledgeable about interdimensional matters for someone from Orario, A's observed neutrally. Nowing smile flickered across Naruto's features. Very perceptive. Ilga has her own secrets, one's not mine to share. But yes, her expertise comes from personal experience rather than academic study. The cryptic response raised more questions than it answered, but Ace recognized the boundaries of their nascent trust. With a respectful nod, she departed, carefully tracking her route to ensure she could find her way back unassisted. Behind her, Naruto watched until she disappeared among the trees, his expression transitioning from instructor's neutrality to troubled concern. "She's a quick study," he murmured to the empty clearing. "Almost too quick. Loki lounged across her ornate chair with characteristic irreverence, one leg draped over the armrest while she twirled a goblet of wine with deceptive nonchalance. The goddess's perpetually narrowed eyes studied Finn Diemny with unsettling intensity as the prom captain delivered his daily report. "So our little Ace has suddenly developed interest in specialized training," she interrupted, crimson eyes gleaming with curiosity. "Arranged by Ilga Vandal, no less. How fascinatingly convenient." Finn maintained his professional composure, well accustomed to his deity's mercurial nature after centuries of service. "The Guild's magical research division has legitimate interest in exceptional talent. Ace's unique wind affinity represents valuable study material." "Oh, certainly, Loki agreed with exaggerated sincerity. "Just as she certainly got lost in the western forest yesterday, finding absolutely nothing of interest during her solo expedition." The goddess straightened, dropping pretenses of casual interest. "Our sword princess isn't prone to fabrication, Finn." Yet even Riveria noticed discrepancies in her account. The prom captain weighed his response carefully. His loyalty to Loki was absolute, yet he had developed protective instincts toward Ace over the years, recognizing both her extraordinary potential and the psychological wounds that drove her relentless pursuit of strength. "Whatever Ace encountered, she clearly believes discretion is warranted," he replied diplomatically. "Her judgment in tactical matters has proven sound repeatedly." Loki's smile sharpened, reminding Finn that his goddess's trickster nature encompassed both playful mischief and dangerous cunning. "Indeed it has, which is precisely why her sudden secrecy piques my divine curiosity." She set aside her wine, adopting an uncharacteristically serious posture. "The tremor yesterday wasn't natural, Finn." Several deities sensed disturbances accompanying it. This revelation legitimately surprised the veteran captain. "What manner of disturbances?" "Energy signatures outside established magical classifications," Loki elaborated, unnerving focus replacing her typical mischievous demeanor. Hestia described it as a ripple in divine perception. Ganesha experienced momentary disconnection from his arcanum. Several minor deities reported similar phenomena. Finn processed these implications with growing concern. Anything capable of affecting multiple deities' connections to their divine powers represent potential threat beyond ordinary considerations. "And you believe Ace's forest expedition and these phenomena are connected?" "The timing seems improbably coincidental," Loki replied dryly. "Ciali considering our sword princess returned with unexplained minor injuries and dirt consistent with cave environments, despite claiming she merely explored forest trails." Finn couldn't suppress a smile despite the serious conversation. Few details escaped Loki's attention when her curiosity became genuinely engaged. "What would you have me do?" "Direct surveillance would violate the trust our familia structure depends upon." The goddess waved dismissively. "Nothing so crude. Simply ensure our expedition to the 24th floor includes sufficient flexibility in its schedule to accommodate Ace's new training regimen. I'm quite interested in seeing what skills she develops through this arrangement." Finn nodded, recognizing the restrained approach represented significant trust in Ace's judgment. "And if these disturbances recur, then we reevaluate accordingly," Loki replied, her smile returning with predatory edges. "After all, what kind of patron deity would I be if I didn't? Take interest in my children's extracurricular activities." 3 days of intensive training produced results that defied Naruto's cautious expectations. Ace's progress with manipulating her aminal state had accelerated beyond projected timelines, her natural affinity for combat enhancement responding to his methodical guidance with remarkable adaptability. Again, he instructed, circling her as she maintained a physically demanding stance while simultaneously directing enhanced perception toward specific targets arrayed around the clearing. "Identify the sequence as they illuminate." At 30-meter intervals, shadow clones activated small chakra pulses in randomized patterns, each flaring for mere milliseconds before fading. The exercise required splitting attention between physical stability and perceptual acuity, maintaining perfect form while tracking stimuli at the edge of detectability. Southeast, northwest, northeast, directly west, south-southwest, A's recited, the OICE steady despite the beads of sweat tracking down her temples. Her eyes remained closed, other senses compensating through the enhanced perceptual state she had learned to maintain with increasing duration. Perfect, Naruto confirmed, signaling his clones to stand down. That's enough for today. Your control is developing faster than anticipated. A's relaxed from the stance, opening eyes at reflected both satisfaction and impatience. When do we progress to combat applications? Naruto suppressed a smile at her predictable focus. Tomorrow, potentially. Tonight I need to prepare specialized training implements that can withstand enhanced strikes without shattering. He gestured toward a stone bench where refreshments awaited. A tea blend he'd discovered helped stabilize the transitional phase between enhanced and normal states, reducing recovery time between practice sessions. Your adaptation rate is exceptional, he commented as they settled on the bench. In my world, Genin typically require months to develop comparable chakra control. Genin, A's inquired, accepting the offered tea with a nod of thanks. Beginner ninjas, children around 12 years old who've completed basic academy training. Naruto explained, memories of his own chaotic Genin period surfacing briefly. The equivalent of very low-level adventurers here, I suppose. A's sipped her tea thoughtfully. Your world trains children for combat that young as well. The parallel hadn't escaped Naruto's notice, another uncomfortable similarity between shinobi society and Orario's adventurer system. Yes, though reform efforts were underway when I left. The Fourth War changed perspectives on many traditional practices. You mentioned this war before. Against the Kagaya entity, Naruto gazed into his tea, expression distant. Kagaya Otsutsuki was the final enemy, yes, but the conflict began differently. Power struggles, ideological disputes, manipulation by forces working from shadows. He shook his head, refocusing on the present, ancient history now, from the perspective of both worlds. A's studied him with that penetrating gaze that sometimes made Naruto wonder if she possessed some form of empathic perception despite her outwardly reserved demeanor. You lost people, she observed quietly. Not a question but a recognition from one familiar with such wounds. Naruto nodded, unexpected emotion tightening his throat. 3 years had passed since his displacement, yet certain memories remained razor-edged. Many, some to death, others to darkness that consumed them from within. The friend you mentioned, Sasuke. He found his way back, eventually. Naruto managed a genuine smile at this particular recollection. Stubbornest bastard I've ever known, but he rediscovered his humanity when it mattered most. Quote, A's absorbed this with thoughtful silence before shifting toward a less personal topic. The enhanced perception training, it's preparing me to sense chakra specifically, isn't it? To detect the Kagaya fragment when it reconstitutes. Perceptive, Naruto acknowledged, impressed by her tactical insight. Yes, though it serves multiple purposes. Enhanced perception creates the foundation for the combat applications we'll develop next, while simultaneously sensitizing your awareness to energy patterns outside Orario's classification system. He set aside his empty cup, expression growing serious. The fragment will attempt concealment when it reconstitutes, adopting forms that blend with this world's inhabitants. Being able to detect its distinctive energy signature regardless of physical appearance will prove crucial. Could it take human form? A's asked, implications immediately apparent. Or elven, or dwarven, or any other races native to Orario, Naruto confirmed grimly. Kagaya absorbed opponents' abilities in our world. The fragment likely retains similar adaptive capacity. This revelation cast their training in starker perspective. A's set her cup down with deliberate care, processing implications. Then we need to expand our allies carefully. Anyone we confide in could potentially be compromised. Exactly why I've lived in isolation since arriving. Naruto agreed, though that strategy has reached its limits. The fragment's activities will accelerate as it gains strength. Remaining hidden becomes counterproductive when broader awareness might identify its movements. Yet you've limited our confidence to just Ilga, A's observed neutrally. Naruto's expression remained carefully controlled. For now, I'm considering approaching selected individuals with capabilities that complement our needs, but verification protocols must be established first, methods to confirm identity that the fragment cannot duplicate. Their discussion continued as afternoon stretched toward evening, strategic considerations gradually replacing training assessments as they evaluated potential developments in their interdimensional adversaries' capabilities. Throughout their conversation, Naruto found himself increasingly impressed by Aiza's tactical acumen, her combat experience in the dungeon providing perspective that complement his shinobi background in unexpected ways. As daylight faded, Aiza prepared to return to Orario, gathering the few personal items she had brought for their extended training session. Same time tomorrow, she confirmed. Securing her sword, Naruto nodded. Though come prepared for more physically demanding exercises. We'll begin translating perceptual enhancement into combat applications. As Aiza departed, Naruto remained at the clearing's edge, monitoring her progress until certain she had successfully navigated the forest's more hazardous regions. Once alone, he formed the distinctive os-shaped hand seal that had become his signature technique. Shadow Clone Jutsu. 5 perfect duplicates materialized around him, each awaiting instruction with identical expressions of focused attention. You too, he directed. Pointing to the leftmost clones, continue developing the modified chakra-responsive training implements. Focus on durability without sacrificing sensitivity to enhanced strikes. They nodded and departed immediately toward his workshop, already discussing technical specifications. You, he continued, addressing the center clone, maintain perimeter surveillance. 4-hour rotation. Prioritize northwestern approach vectors where yesterday's sensor detected fluctuations. The designated clone disappeared in a blur of movement, heading toward the network of early warning seals Naruto had established throughout his territory. The rest of you, with me, he instructed the remaining duplicates. We have a seal matrix to recalibrate. Together, they entered his dwelling. Proceeding to a back room where complex arrays of symbols covered walls, ceiling, and floor in interconnected patterns that would appear decorative to untrained observers. At the room's center stood a raised platform inscribed with the most intricate configuration, concentric circles of script spiraling inward toward a central point where a small crystalline object pulsed with soft blue luminescence. Dimensional anchors destabilizing again, one clone observed, noting subtle irregularities in the crystal's rhythm. The convergence must be accelerating from both sides. Naruto nodded grimly. Ilga's calculations suggested this timeline. We'll need to reinforce the separation barriers while maintaining the monitoring channel. He seated himself at the platform's edge, forming a sequence of 12 distinct seals in rapid succession. Begin the harmonization sequence. As his clones took positions around the room's perimeter, each initiating complementary procedures. Naruto closed his eyes and extended his awareness into the complex energy field they had collectively established over months of experimentation. This represented his most closely guarded secret, an adaptation of space-time ninjutsu modified to function within Orario's different physical laws. The system served 2 critical functions, maintaining tenuous connection to his home dimension for monitoring purposes while simultaneously reinforcing the barriers between worlds to slow the convergence process. Within this meditative state, Naruto could occasionally glimpse fragments of the elemental nations, brief, distorted images suggesting that time flowed differently between dimensions. In rare moments of perfect alignment, he had witnessed Konoha's familiar silhouette, expanded and modernized beyond his departure timeline, confirming his suspicion that years in Orario might represent decades in his native world. Today's adjustment proceeded without the hoped-for glimpses home, the dimensional barriers proving more resistant than during previous maintenance sessions. After nearly an hour of concentrated effort, Naruto and his clones managed to restabilize the monitoring array, though the results remained suboptimal. The interference patterns are changing, he muttered as his clones dispelled, their accumulated experiences integrating with his consciousness. Something's actively disrupting the dimensional boundaries now, not merely exploiting existing weaknesses. A troubling development that suggested the Kagaya fragment had progressed further than anticipated. Naruto made detailed notes of the observed anomalies, intending to share them with Ilga during their scheduled information exchange the following evening. As he secured the monitoring room, a familiar presence brushed against his consciousness, Kurama stirring from the meditative state the fox often maintained while Naruto handled routine matters. "The girl continues to surprise you," the Nine Tails observed, having absorbed Naruto's experiences with Ace through their shared perceptual link. "Her adaptability is remarkable," Naruto acknowledged internally. "Especially considering she's working with an entirely different energy system." Quote, "Not entirely different," Kurama corrected, his mental voice thoughtful. "There are structural similarities between fauna enhancements and certain aspects of chakra circulation. Perhaps not coincidental, given what we've learned about dimensional connections." This perspective aligned with theories Naruto had been developing, that Orario's gods might have originated from, or at least visited, dimensions adjacent to the elemental nations during prehistoric periods, their influence creating parallel but distinct magical systems. "The training's working, regardless," Naruto replied. "Her enhanced perception already exceeds most Chunin-level sensors. Once we translate that to combat applications." His thoughts fractured as a distinctive pulse resonated through his awareness, one of his perimeter alarm seals activating with urgent priority. Simultaneously, the clone assigned to surveillance dispelled itself, transferring immediate knowledge of the trigger. An injured adventurer had stumbled into the northeastern section of Naruto's territory, pursued by 3 monsters exhibiting the same reddish energy signatures they had observed in the wolves days earlier. Naruto moved with practiced efficiency, gathering essential equipment while creating 2 fresh shadow clones. "Secure the dwelling and monitoring array," he instructed them before departing in a blur of speed, covering ground toward the disturbance with chakra-enhanced leaps that traversed dozens of meters per bound. He arrived at the northeastern perimeter within minutes, immediately assessing the situation from a concealed vantage point. The adventurer, a young human male wearing distinctive purple-trimmed armor that identified him as Soma Familia, had collapsed against a fallen log. Blood seeping from multiple lacerations across his torso and left leg. His pursuers circled with predatory patience approximately 50 meters away, awaiting optimal attack conditions rather than rushing their wounded prey. These weren't normal forest monsters. Their appearance suggested hellhound ancestry, but significant mutations had altered their basic physiology. Bony protrusions extended from their spines, forming armor-like plates along vital areas. Their eyes glowed with unnatural intelligence, and most concerningly, visible currents of reddish energy coursed beneath the skin in patterns reminiscent of chakra pathways. Naruto evaluated options quickly. Direct engagement risked exposing his abilities to the injured adventurer, potentially compromising operational security. Conversely, allowing the monsters to claim their prey violated every ethical principle he valued. Decision made, he created 3 shadow clones with minimal hand seals, minimizing visible evidence of his techniques. "Disguise protocols," he murmured, and the clones immediately transformed with subtle applications of henge, altering facial features and clothing details to appear as generic adventurers rather than duplicates of Naruto himself. The clones nodded understanding before moving into position around the clearing, each approaching from different angles to suggest a coincident adventurer party rather than connected entities. Naruto himself remained concealed, prepared to intervene directly only if his clones proved insufficient. From his vantage point, he observed the tactical precision with which the altered hellhounds coordinated their positions, behavior impossibly sophisticated for normal monsters, suggesting direct influence from the Kagaya fragment. The first clone deliberately snapped a branch, drawing the hellhounds' attention as it emerged into the clearing with weapon drawn. "Hey, that's a Soma adventurer," it called with convincing concern. "Get ready, these monsters are acting weird." The other clones appeared on cue, positioning themselves to protect the wounded adventurer while presenting apparent vulnerability that would entice the hellhounds to attack rather than retreat. The predators hesitated, evaluating this new development with unsettling calculation before the largest, clearly the alpha, issued a series of guttural vocalizations that coordinated their approach. They attacked simultaneously from 3 different vectors, moving with speed and synchronization that would overwhelm most mid-level adventurer parties. Naruto's clones responded with carefully modulated counterattacks, effective enough to neutralize the immediate threat while revealing no abilities beyond what accomplished level 3 adventurers might demonstrate. Fight concluded in approximately 40 seconds, ending with the Hellhounds retreating rather than fighting to the death, another behavioral anomaly that reinforced Naruto's concerns about their evolutionary trajectory. Once certain the immediate danger had passed, Naruto circled wide around the clearing, approaching from the direction of Orario as though he had coincidentally been traveling the same forest path. His transformed clones acknowledged his arrival with appropriate surprise, maintaining their cover identities as they reported the situation. Found him being pursued by modified hellhounds. One explained as Naruto knelt beside the injured adventurer. They retreated northeast after we engaged. Naruto examined the wounded man with practiced assessment, identifying numerous lacerations requiring immediate treatment alongside deeper puncture wounds suggesting targeted strikes at vital areas. These wounds need proper healing beyond field treatment, he determined, meeting the adventurer's pain-hazed gaze. What's your name? Xanis, the man managed through clenched teeth. Soma Familia. Was scouting. Unusual monster activities, didn't expect coordinated ambush. Save your strength, Naruto advised. Applying temporary compression bandages from his equipment pouch. We need to get you to Orario quickly. The adventurer's eyes widened with sudden recognition. Gaze fixing on Naruto's distinctive facial markings. You're the wild sage, he whispered, momentary awe overriding pain. The forest hermit. Thought you were just tavern stories. Naruto maintained neutral expression while internally reassessing operational parameters. His reputation had apparently spread further than anticipated, complicating anonymity considerations. Tavern stories are often exaggerated. He replied noncommittally, completing emergency treatment. But right now, we need to move quickly. Those hellhounds might return with reinforcements. He fashioned an improvy, said Stretcher with his clone's assistance, securing Xanis as comfortably as possible before setting course toward Orario. As they traveled, Naruto maintained vigilant awareness for further monster activity while contemplating implications of this encounter. The Hellhounds' behavior confirmed accelerating influence from the Kagaya fragment, coordinated tactics, target prioritization, and strategic retreat rather than mindless aggression. If such evolutionary jumps were occurring among surface monsters, developments within the dungeon itself likely progressed at faster rates, protected from observation by depths that limited regular monitoring. More concerning, the wounded adventurer had specifically mentioned being assigned to scout unusual monster activities, suggesting Orario's guilds and familias had already noted behavioral changes significant enough to warrant investigation. The timeline was contracting faster than Naruto had calculated. Decision crystallized as they approached Orario's imposing walls. Continued isolation had become strategically counterproductive. Establishing limited contact with key organizations within the city had become necessity rather than risk. Ensuring his clones maintained appropriate separation to avoid raising suspicion about their identical combat capabilities, Naruto guided their party toward Orario's western gate, mentally preparing for his first official entry into the city he had observed from shadows for 3 years. The moment represented significant operational shift, from reclusive observer to active participant. As they passed beneath the massive stone archway into Orario proper, Naruto allowed himself momentary appreciation of architectural details previously viewed only from rooftops or through scrying techniques. Where to? One clone asked, maintaining its role as unconnected adventurer. Pantheon, Naruto directed, referencing the guild headquarters where adventurers registered quests and received medical treatment. Their healers can handle wounds of this severity. As their party navigated increasingly crowded streets, Naruto noted the attention they attracted, curious glances at the injured adventurer transforming to whispered speculation as observant citizens recognized his distinctive appearance from circulating rumors. By the time they reached the Pantheon's imposing entrance, a small crowd had gathered. Speculation spreading with the inevitability of wildfire. Inside the guild headquarters, administrative efficiency took precedence over curiosity. Healers immediately transferred Xanis to a treatment room. Guild officials documenting the encounter while processing identification for Naruto and his supposed companions. You've never registered with the guild, observed the bespectacled half-elf processing his information. Her professional demeanor tinged with barely concealed curiosity. Yet you intervened to save a Soma Familia member from modified monsters outside city boundaries. Naruto provided appropriately vague responses, deflecting personal questions while emphasizing the monsters' unusual tactical behaviors, information of legitimate value to guild intelligence efforts. Throughout the interview, he maintained awareness of his surroundings, noting several individuals who observed the proceedings with interest exceeding professional requirement. Most notably, a silver-haired woman of extraordinary beauty watched from an upper balcony, her violet eyes fixed on Naruto with unsettling intensity. Even at this distance, he sensed something distinctly non-human about her presence, a divine aura carefully modulated but detectable to his heightened perceptual abilities. Freya, Kurama identified through their mental link, drawing on accumulated knowledge from Naruto's observational intelligence gathering, goddess of beauty, renowned for collecting exceptional individuals for her familia. Dangerous in ways that extend beyond obvious. Naruto acknowledged this assessment without visible reaction, completing necessary documentation before declining the guild's offer of temporary accommodations. As he prepared to depart, a familiar figure intercepted him near the entrance, Ilga Vandal. Expression professionally neutral despite the significance of their public interaction. "Your assistance to the injured adventurer is commendable," she stated for observers' benefit. Extending a formal guild identification scroll. "The research division would appreciate debriefing regarding the modified monsters you encountered. Perhaps tomorrow morning would be convenient." The document she presented contained concealed information beneath its official text, written in microscopic script detectable only to enhanced perception, convergence accelerating. "Meeting tonight imperative. Standard location. Tomorrow morning works," Naruto agreed aloud, returning the scroll with appropriate formality. "The behavioral modifications I observed deserve proper documentation." With this exchange providing plausible explanation for future interactions, Naruto departed the Pantheon, his transformed clones having dispersed during administrative processing to avoid complications. Once outside, he navigated toward less populated districts, eventually finding sufficient privacy in a secluded alleyway to employ body flicker technique, vanishing from Orario proper to appear at his forest dwelling's perimeter. The day's developments necessitated immediate strategic reassessment. Naruto summoned fresh shadow clones to resume monitoring duties while he prepared for that evening's critical meeting with Ilga. If convergence acceleration matched his observations from the seal room, their timeline for intervention had contracted dramatically, potentially reducing preparation period from weeks to mere days. Which meant Wallenstein's training schedule required corresponding acceleration, regardless of standard progression protocols. Absolutely not, Naruto stated emphatically, arms crossed as he faced Ilga across the small table in his dwelling's secure meeting room. Accelerated implementation risks permanent damage to her fauna pathways. The theoretical model needs at least 4 more days of calibration. The elven historian maintained characteristic composure despite the vehemence of his objection. Theoretical models become irrelevant when reality shifts beneath them, she countered, sliding a parchment covered with complex calculations across the table. The convergence progression has entered exponential phase. Conservative estimates give us 11 days before critical threshold, not the 3 weeks your previous calculations suggested. Naruto examined her figures with growing concern, recognizing that her independent measure NTS aligned distressingly well with anomalies he had detected during seal maintenance. Even accepting this accelerated timeline, he argued, rushing A's training increases probability of catastrophic pathway collapse. She's progressing remarkably fast already. But not fast enough. Ilga's interruption carried uncharacteristic urgency. The monitoring station beneath Babel detected 70 distinct dimensional fluctuations yesterday alone. 3 caused temporary equipment failures. Whatever the Kagaya fragment is doing, it's creating cascading effects throughout Orario's magical infrastructure. She leaned forward, green eyes intense in the lamplight. "We need A's combat ready within 7 days, Naruto. Not just with enhanced perception, but with fully integrated attack capabilities. She represents our most viable bridge between systems." Because of her wind affinity, Naruto acknowledged, frustration evident. The element most compatible with sage transformation principles. Precisely. Ilga tapped the calculations meaningfully. Your chakra system and our magic have fundamental compatibility issues except where elemental affinities create natural conversion channels. Aiza's exceptionally pure wind attunement offers conversion efficiency approaching 70%, nearly double what any other adventurer could achieve. The logic proved difficult to counter, yet Naruto's concerns remained valid. Accelerated implementation requires a catalyst, something to stabilize the transition between systems during initial integration phase. I've already identified a potential solution. Ilga retrieved a small wooden box from her satchel, opening it to reveal a crystalline object approximately the size of a thumbnail, pulsing with soft green luminescence. A wind-s. Pirate stone from the 27th floor. Exceptionally pure manifestation, unused in equipment crafting. Naruto examined the crystal without touching it, sensing the concentrated elemental energy contained within its structure. A focus point, he mused, considering applications. It could potentially serve as transitional medium, allowing gradual adaptation rather than forced integration. Precisely my thought, Ilga agreed. Combined with modified implementation of the seal array you showed me last week, we could create a controlled environment for accelerated training while minimizing pathway stress. Their discussion continued late into the night, technical considerations gradually giving way to practical implementation planning as they developed a modified training regimen that balanced acceleration against safety margins. Throughout their collaboration, Naruto found himself again appreciating Ilga's extraordinary knowledge of magical theory, expertise that sometimes suggests origins beyond her claimed background as guild historian. There's one additional complication, Ilga noted as they finalized preparations. Loki has begun taking interest in Aiza's activities. My guild connections report discreet inquiries about the training program supposedly sponsoring her absences. Naruto grimaced at this unwelcome development. How much does she suspect? Impossible to determine precisely, Ilga replied. Loki's reputation for mischief often masks genuine cunning. At minimum, she's noted discrepancies in Aiza's account of her forest expedition. We need additional cover, Naruto determined. Something that satisfies divine curiosity without revealing actual operations. Ilga nodded agreement. I've already implemented preliminary measures, official documentati, on establishing legitimate wind enhancement research involving select adventurers with exceptional elemental affinities. My position within the guild's research division provides sufficient authority to maintain the fiction. That addresses institutional inquiries, Naruto acknowledged. But gods operate on different levels of perception. Loki specifically might sense changes in Aiza's energy signature once we begin integration phase. Quote, a calculated risk we must accept, Ilga concluded pragmatically. Unless you're prepared to abandon the entire approach and seek alternative options with significantly lower probability of success. Quote, the question wasn't merely rhetorical. Despite their substantial investment in the current strategy, genuine alternatives existed, less efficient but potentia. LLY viable approaches involving different adventurers or modified techniques. Naruto considered these possibilities with appropriate seriousness before shaking his head. We proceed as planned, he decided. But with additional precautions. I'll modify the integration seal to incorporate masking elements that attenuate external energy signatures during development phases. Ilga raised a skeptical eyebrow. Possible without compromising functional efficiency. Difficult but achievable, Naruto affirmed. Similar principles to how Anbu operatives in my world masked chakra signatures during infiltration missions. As their meeting concluded near midnight, Ilga departed for Orario with detailed instructions for preparations she would coordinate from within the city. Naruto remained at his workbench long after she left, meticulously refining seal designs to accommodate their accelerated timeline while maintaining necessary safety parameters. The elf knows more than she reveals, *Q. Rama observed as Naruto completed the final modifications. Her understanding of interdimensional principles exceeds what any native of this world should possess. Agreed, Naruto replied internally. Too focused on his task for verbal response. She's clearly experienced dimensional travel herself, though under different circumstances than ours. A potential vulnerability in our operational security. The fox noted without specific accusation. Also our most valuable ally, Naruto countered. Her resources within Orario provide access we couldn't establish independently without compromising our primary mission. Kurama's mental equivalent of a shrug conveyed pragmatic acceptance of the situation's complexity. The sword girl represents greater immediate concern regardless. Her potential for sage transformation creates opportunities and dangers we haven't fully calculated. Asterisk. Naruto paused in his work, considering this perspective. You've sensed something specific about her affinity. Nothing concrete. The Nine Tails clarified, merely observing that her connection to wind exceeds normal elemental affinity parameters. There's something resonant about it. Almost familiar. Asterisk. This assessment aligned with Naruto's own nebulous impressions during training sessions. Aiza's manipulation of wind occasionally produced effects reminiscent of techniques from the elemental nations, not in form or application, but in the fundamental quality of energy expressed. Tomorrow will provide clearer indications, he concluded, finalizing the modified seal array. Once integration begins, any anomalous interactions should become immediately apparent. With preparations complete, Naruto finally permitted himself brief rest, maintaining light meditation rather than true sleep, a habit developed during his years of vigilance in this adopted world. As his consciousness settled into this intermediate state, attention naturally turned toward the crystal focus point Ilga had provided. Its pulsing green energy establishing subtle harmony with the surrounding environment. Something about its resonance pattern triggered recognition, a quality Naruto had encountered before, though context eluded immediate recall. The mystery accompanied him into meditative depths, where fragmented memories of his original world intermingled with current strategic considerations, creating connections his waking mind might otherwise miss. By dawn, when consciousness fully returned, both mystery and potential solution had crystallized into implementation plan that would test the limits of interdimensional adaptation, and the exceptional potential of the Sword Princess who had unwittingly become central to their defense against impending convergence. Aiz arrived precisely at dawn, her punctuality reflecting both military discipline and personal eagerness that her composed expression couldn't entirely conceal. She noted immediate differences in the training area, complex patterns inscribed on the ground in substances that alternated between visible and imperceptible depending on viewing angle, equipment arranged in configurations suggesting ceremonial rather than practical purpose. Something's changed, she observed succinctly as Naruto emerged from his dwelling. He nodded, dispensing with preliminary greetings. The timeline has accelerated. We have approximately 7 days before the Kagaya fragment reaches functional reconstitution, not the weeks previously estimated. Aiz absorbed this information without visible reaction beyond slight narrowing of her eyes. You're modifying my training accordingly. With significant reservations, Naruto confirmed, gesturing toward the prepared area. What I'm proposing involves calculated risk, accelerating integra Chion between your fauna-enhanced abilities and the hybrid techniques we've been developing. He extended his hand, revealing the wind spirit stone resting on his palm. This will serve as catalyst and stabilizer during the process. A focus point for your elemental affinity that bridges the gap between our different energy systems. Aiz studied the crystal with appropriate caution, her enhanced perception, developed through their previous training, detecting the concentrated elemental energy pulsing within its structure. Similar to the crystal in your monitoring room, she noted, surprising Naruto with her observational acuity. He hadn't realized she had glimpsed the dimensional anchor during her brief visit to his dwelling. Similar purpose, different application, he acknowledged. The Chi-1 maintains connection between dimensions. This will help integrate techniques that normally require decades of development. He outlined the accelerated implementation plan they would undertake. A modified version of Sage training adapted to work with her fauna rather than traditional chakra pathways. Throughout his explanation, Aiz listened with characteristic intensity, interrupting only N clarification proved necessary for complete understanding. The potential complications, she finally prompted when he had finished describing the process itself. Naruto appreciated her pragmatism, no hesitation or fear, merely requirement for complete information before proceeding. Best case scenario, successful integration creating hybrid techniques that combine the best aspects of both systems. Worst case, permanent damage to your fauna pathways, potentially reducing your status parameters or compromising magical capabilities. He met her gaze directly. Most likely outcome falls bet. In. Partial integration requiring continued refinement, with temporary disruptions during adaptation phase. A's considered this assessment with appropriate seriousness. The alternative being INSIF, ICENT preparation when the fragment reaches full reconstitution. Essentially, Naruto confirmed, though I've implemented every possible safety measure, including emergency termination protocols the integration process shows signs of destabilization. Without further discussion, A's moved toward the center of the prepared area. Let's begin. Her straightforward acceptance didn't surprise Naruto. He had come to recognize the particular quality of determination that defined her approach to everything. Not recklessness or bravado, but calculated acceptance of necessary risks in service to greater purpose. First phase focuses on establishing resonance between the wind spirit stone and your elemental affinity, he explained, directing her to kneel at the center of the primary seal configuration. Similar to meditation exercises we've practiced, but with the crystal as focal point. He placed the stone on a small pedestal before her, positioning himself on the seal array's parame. Where he could both monitor the process and intervene if necessary. Close your eyes and extend your awareness toward the crystal, just as you've done with environmental energy during perception training. The stone contains concentrated wind element in its purest form. Allow your affinity to recognize and respond to it naturally. A's complied, settling into the meditative posture they had refined over previous sessions. Minutes passed in silence as she established initial connection, her breathing gradually synchronizing with the crystal's pulsation rhythm. Naruto monitored this phase carefully, sensing the preliminary resonance developing between adventurer and catalyst. Good, he encouraged quietly. Now gradually extend your magical awareness into the surrounding seal array. Sense resistance initially, that's normal. The patterns are designed to create controlled tension that helps restructure energy pathways. The subsequent 2 hours progressed through increasingly complex phases of the integration process, each building upon previous foundations while introducing new elements of the hybrid technique they sought to develop. Throughout the procedure, Naruto maintained vigilant observation, periodically adjusting seal components to accommodate A's individual energy signature as it evolved through the integration process. Critical juncture arrived midway the third hour, the phase where theoretical models suggested maximum vulnerability during transition between systems. A's physical manifestations reflected the internal stress, perspiration bedding along her forehead despite the morning's cool temperature, subtle tension visible in her otherwise composed features. We're approaching primary integration threshold, Naruto informed her, moving to a position directly opposite her placement in the array. This is where theoretical pathways converge. You'll experience sensations similar to status level advancement, but more focused and potentially uncomfortable. A's acknowledged with minimal nod, maintaining concentration on the increasingly complex energy manipulation. As the threshold approached, Naruto formed a series of hand seals in rapid succession, activating secondary components of the array designed to stabilize the transition. The moment of convergence manifested visually as the seal patterns briefly illuminated, green RGY from the spirit stone expanding outward to encompass A's kneeling form while golden light rose from the array itself, the two forces intermingling in complex patterns before settling into harmonious circulation. Status, Naruto inquired tersely, monitoring for signs of rejection or instability. A's eyes remained closed, her voice steady despite evident concentration. Intense pressure along status channels, particularly through upper spine and outward through arms. Not painful but insistent. Naruto recognized the described sensation from his own early sage training, natural energy seeking established pathways while simultaneously creating new channels where necessary. The parallel suggested successful adaptation rather than rejection. Allow it to flow naturally, he instructed. Don't resist or direct yet, simply observe the patterns as they establish themselves. The integration continued for another 40 minutes, the visible energy manifestations gradually subsiding as new pathways stabilized. When A's finally opened her eyes, Naruto immediately noted the change, subtle but unmistakable alterations to her iris pattern, golden amber now containing barely perceptible green flecks that suggested successful elemental integration. How do you feel? He asked, approaching cautiously as the seal array powered down to maintenance level. Ace considered the question with characteristic thoroughness, clearly cataloging internal sensations before responding. Different. More. Connected. She extended her hand, palm upward, where small currents of air visibly circulated without conscious direction. The wind responds without specific invocation now. Expected outcome of successful primary integration, Naruto confirmed, unable to entirely suppress satisfaction at the procedure's apparent success. Your natural affinity has established direct connection through the hybrid pathways we've created. He guided her through preliminary tests, simple exercises assigned to evaluate control and response characteristics of the newly established system. Throughout these assessments, A's demonstrated remarkable adaptation rate, intuitively adjusting to the modify energy circulation with precision that suggested natural compatibility beyond their theoretical predictions. Enough for today, Naruto finally determined, noting subtle signs of fatigue beneath her composed exterior. Your system needs time to stabilize the new configurations. Pushing further risks pathway collapse. For once, A's didn't protest the conservative approach, tacit acknowledgement of the extraordinary changes her body was accommodating. Tomorrow we begin combat applications. Assuming overnight stabilization proceeds as expected, Naruto confirmed. Though we'll start with basic forms rather than advanced techniques. As they concluded the session, Naruto provided detailed instructions for her independent practice that evening, exercises designed to strengthen the new pathways without overtaxing them. Along with monitoring protocols to detect potential complications requiring immediate attention. The integration will continue developing even while you sleep, he explained. You might experience unusual dreams involving wind or flight, perfectly normal aspect of elemental attunement. A's nodded understanding, gathering her equipment with movements that subtly tested her body's response to the modifications. As she prepared to depart, a question clearly formed, though she hesitated momentarily before voicing it. The changes, will they be detectable to others? To my goddess specifically. Perceptive consideration that Naruto had anticipated. The masking components in the seal arrays should prevent obvious external detection, but close observation might reveal subtle differences in your magical signature, particularly during active use. Loki notices everything eventually, A's observed with pragmatic acceptance. Especially concerning her familia members. We've established sufficient cover through Ilga's research program, Naruto reminded her. Any detectable changes can be attributed to specialized training in wind enhancement techniques. Which is technically accurate if incomplete. This explanation seemed to satisfy immediate concerns, though the underlying complication remained. Divine perception operated on fundamentally different principles than mortal awareness, creating inherent uncertainty in concealment effectiveness. As A's departed, Naruto created several shadow clones to begin preparations for the next phase of training while he personally conducted thorough analysis of the integration procedure's results. The data proved encouraging, adaptation rates significantly exceeding predicted parameters, with stability indicators suggesting successful harmonization between the disparate systems. The girl has natural affinity for sage techniques, Kurama observed through their mental link. Almost as though her fauna was specifically designed to accommodate them. This assessment aligned with Naruto's own observations. Loki's blessing does seem unusually compatible with natural energy manipulation. Perhaps not coincidental, given what we've learned about connections between dimensions. The implications warranted further investigation, but immediate priorities took precedence. Naruto focused on refining the training progression for coming days, adapting theoretical frameworks to accommodate A's demonstrated capabilities while maintaining necessary safety margins. Evening approached as he completed these preparations, prompting creation of a shadow clone to deliver update documentation to Ilga's designated drop point in Orario while he maintained focus on primary operations. As the clone departed, Naruto sensed familiar presence approaching his perimeter, not A's returning unexpectedly, but another significant contact. Ryuu Lion moved through the forest with professional stealth that would render her undetectable to most observers. Her approach vector suggested purposeful visit rather than coincidental patrol, her careful adherence to established safe paths indicating prior coordination with Ilga rather than independent initiative. Naruto allowed her to reach the clearing's edge before acknowledging her presence, appreciating the precision with which she navigated his territory without triggering defensive measures. "The historian said you'd be expecting me," Ryuu stated without preamble as she emerged from forest cover, her expression professionally neutral despite the unusual circumstances. "Ilga mentioned she might send a courier," Naruto acknowledged, assessing the elven adventurer with careful attention. Her reputation within Orario was well established, former member of the now decimated Estrella Familia, currently operating as independent agent while maintaining connection to the surviving goddess through obligation rather than active fauna. Ryuu extended a sealed message tube. "Information regarding dungeon anomalies on the 18th through 24th floors. Requires immediate review." The formal delivery disguised actual purpose, establishing direct contact between operatives previously connected only through Ilga's intermediation. Naruto accepted both message and implicit expansion of their operational circle, recognizing strategic necessity despite inherent security concerns. "The contents are sensitive," he inquired, maintaining appropriate operational protocol. "Classified Category 3, Ryuu confirmed, using guild designation FO. Our information restricted to senior researchers and emergency response coordinators. Temporal anomalies recorded by multiple independent parties, verified through instrumentation rather than subjective observation." This detail captured Naruto's full attention. Temporal distortions represented significant escalation in convergence effects, precisely the pattern observed during final stages of dimensional collapse in theoretical models. "You've encountered these effects personally," he observed rather than asked, noting subtle indicators in her presentation that suggested direct experience. Ryu's expression remained professionally composed, though something flickered briefly in her eyes, recognition of perception exceeding normal parameters. 3 days ago, she confirmed. Escorting researchers investigating monster behavioral anomalies. Localized time dilation effect lasting approximately 4 minutes. Subjective experience, measured as 17 seconds by observers outside the affected radius. Classic symptoms of dimensional boundary deterioration, precisely the development Naruto had feared based on monitoring array data. He unsealed the message tube, scanning contents with enhanced perception that processed information at accelerated rate. The documented anomalies painted concerning pattern: 17 distinct temporal distortion events recorded within 8 days, each progressively larger in affected radius and duration differential. More troubling, spatial mapping revealed concentric pattern originating from specific coordinates deep within the dungeon, the 27th floor central chamber where preliminary intelligence suggested unusual crystalline formations had recently emerged. "The guild hasn't connected these events to the surface tremors," Naruto noted. "Identifying critical intelligence gap." "Correct," Ryuu confirmed. Current working theory attributes the anomalies to dungeon evolutionary response rather than external influence. Only Ilga and select researchers recognize potential connection to surface phenomena. Naruto considered strategic implications, mentally revising operational timelines based on this new information. "These patterns accelerate our concerns significantly. The convergence is progressing faster than even our revised estimates suggested." Ryu's response demonstrated why Ilga had selected her as direct contact. Professional pragmatism unmarred by either skepticism or excessive alarm. "The historian indicated you're implementing countermeasures. What support functions are required?" This direct approach to operational integration reflected efficient mindset Naruto appreciated. Intelligence gathering focused on specific dungeon regions, particularly the 27th floor crystal formations. Monitoring temporal fluctuation patterns to predict progression rate. Potentially secure transportation for specialized equipment between my location and designated dungeon access points. Ryuu absorbed these requirements with a single nod. Feasible within established operational parameters. I maintain access to multiple dungeon entry protocols through various guild affiliations. Her measured competence reinforced Ilga's assessment of her value as operational asset. Without familia attachment constraining her movements, Ryuu could navigate between surface and dungeon with flexibility unavailable to most adventurers. While her established reputation provided access to information channels normally restricted to guild officials. "There's additional context you should understand," Naruto added, strategic necessity overriding security concerns. The anomalies originate from interdimensional convergence, my native reality bleeding into Orario's through weakened boundaries. If this revelation surprised Ryuu, her expression betrayed nothing beyond slight narrowing of her eyes. Explaining your unusual abilities and knowledge base, she observed neutrally. Ilga referenced, alternative origin without specifics. The understated response confirmed Naruto's initial assessment of her operational value, professional focus on mission parameters rather than distracting curiosity about exceptional elements outside immediate relevance. The convergence threatens both worlds, he continued, providing essential context. Left unchecked, it will ultimately collapse dimensional boundaries completely, with catastrophic consequences for both realities. Hence the accelerated countermeasure implementation, Ryuu concluded logically, including special training protocols for the Sword Princess. This reference to A's suggested broader awareness of operational components than Naruto had anticipated. Ilga has briefed you comprehensively. Need to know basis only, Ryuu clarified. Tactical overview without technical specifics. My function remains primarily intelligence gathering and secure transport rather than direct implementation. The conversation continued with exchange of operational details, communication protocols, emergency contingencies, and coordination mechanisms that would facilitate their expanded collaboration. Throughout this discussion, Naruto found himself appreciating Ryuu's precise professionalism, her adventurer experience clearly supplemented by formal training in tactical operations that exceeded typical guild parameters. As their briefing concluded, practical considerations emerged regarding her return journey to Orario, timing that would require traversing the forest's more dangerous regions after nightfall. Secure accommodations are available if overnight rest would enhance operational effectiveness, Naruto offered, indicating auxiliary structure adjacent to his main dwelling. Ryuu considered this with pragmatic assessment rather than social interpretation. Logical given information processing requirements before morning guild meeting. Except with operational gratitude, her formal phrasing prompted unexpected smile from Naruto, her communication style reminded him of Sai during early Anbu integration, precisely structured without social convention decorations. The building includes independent facilities and secure documentation processing equipment. Make yourself comfortable while I prepare additional materials requiring transport. As Naruto gathered relevant intelligence for Ryuu's return journey, he reflected on the rational expansion necessity had forced upon their initially restricted circle. Each new participant increased both capabilities and vulnerability, essential resources balanced against increased security considerations. Yet Ryuu's professional demeanor suggested Ilga's recommendation had been sound. Unlike many adventurers driven by glory, financial reward, or divine favor, the elven warrior Red motivated by disciplined commitment to maintaining order within systems she valued, precisely the perspective their operation required in expansion phase. Later that evening, as they reviewed coordinate mapping for temporal anomaly patterns, Naruto observed subtle shift in Ryuu's professional distance, not casual familiarity, but gradual recognition of shared operational philosophy transcending their different origins. You've done this before, she noted during brief respite, eyes evaluating his systematic approach to intelligence analysis. Coordinated responses to existential threats through limited resource operations. The observation demonstrated perceptiveness exceeding professional requirement. Similar scenarios in my world, Naruto acknowledged, though with different parameters and available resources. Successfully, judging by your methodological refinement, Ryuu concluded. The understated compliment from someone who clearly recognized operational expertise carried unexpected weight. Not always, Naruto admitted, memories of failed missions and lost comrades briefly surfacing. But often enough to develop functional frameworks for impossible situations. Things shifted in Ryuu's expression, subtle recognition of shared experience that transcended verbal communication. For an instant, professional distance receded, revealing glimpse of the person beneath. Operational facade, someone intimately familiar with both victory and devastating loss. The moment passed as quickly as it had emerged, both returning to tactical planning with renewed focus. Yet something had fundamentally shifted in their operational dynamic, mutual recognition establishing foundation for trust beyond mere strategic alignment. As midnight approached, they finalized coordination protocols that would guide their expanded collaboration through coming critical days. When Ryuu departed at dawn the following morning, both understood that their operational partnership had evolved beyond Ilga's initial intermediary arrangement into direct tactical alliance, one that would prove essential as Convergence acceleration continued to contract their timeline for intervention. The Four Saints settled into deceptive tranquility following her departure, belying the accelerating crisis developing beneath Orario's streets and within the dungeon's mysterious depths. Naruto returned to preparation for Aiza's combat integration training, aware that their rapidly evolving strategy now depended on successful coordination between three key operatives with complementary capabilities. Whether his expanded approach would prove sufficient against a fragment of goddess who had nearly destroyed his original world remained uncertain. But operational necessity had forced their hand, pushing implementation timeline beyond cautious parameters into calculated risk territory. As dawn light filtered through ancient trees surrounding his clearing, Naruto sensed days approaching for their scheduled session, her energy signature subtly altered by yesterday's integration, wind currents responding to her passage in ways visible only to enhanced perception. The accelerated training would test theoretical limits of interdimensional adaptation, with success measured not by perfect implementation but by sufficient capability development before Convergence reached critical threshold. Whether days or mere hours remained before the Kagaya fragment completed reconstitution, one certainty remained: their improvised alliance represented Orario's only defense against threat beyond its comprehension. Naruto watched Aiza emerge from the forest path, her movements displaying subtle enhancement already, perfect economy of motion that suggested successful integration proceeding even faster than optimistic projections. Perhaps sufficient foundation existed for implementation of combat applications earlier than scheduled, accelerating their preparation timeline against the Convergence progression. Me would tell if their calculated gamble proved sufficient against interdimensional threat. For now, each hour of preparation represented essential investment against coming confrontation that would determine the fate of two worlds hovering at Convergence threshold. Chapter 2 End Chapter 3, The Sword and the Sage. Morning light spilled across Orario's central marketplace, casting long shadows between vendor stalls as merchants arranged wares with practiced efficiency. The day had barely begun, yet Northwest Main already bustled with activity, adventurers purchasing supplies before dungeon expeditions, craftsmen delivering commissioned items, and ordinary citizens navigating the controlled chaos of commerce that powered the labyrinth city's economy. Few noticed the blonde figure moving RPOSEFULLY along the market's eastern periphery. Dressed in simple black pants and a rust-orange tunic that stood out among Orario's more subdued fashion palette, Naruto Uzumaki maintained the deliberate pace of someone with specific destination rather than the meandering gait of typical market browsers. The whisker-marked scars on his cheeks caught occasional curious glances, but in a city where demi-humans and adventurers of every description mingled freely, his appearance hardly warranted sustained attention. That calculated anonymity suited Naruto perfectly as he conducted his first daily GHT reconnaissance of Orario's public spaces. 3 years of rooftop observations and shadow clone intelligence gathering had provided comprehensive understanding of the city's physical layout, but experiencing its rhythms directly offered contextual insights unavailable through distant observation. "Excuse me," a harried voice interrupted his thoughts as a young woman carrying precariously balanced crates stumbled into his path. "Need to get..." "Oh." Naruto's reflexes engaged automatically, hands materializing to stabilize both woman and wobbling cargo before either could topple. "Careful there," he offered with casual kindness, steadying the stack with subtle application of chakra to counterbalance the unstable arrangement. "Thank you." The brunette adjusted her grip once equilibrium returned, offering a grateful smile that brightened her otherwise exhausted features. "These deliveries to Jagamaru-kun would be the death of my reputation if they arrived damaged." Naruto returned her smile with easy warmth that had once been his defining characteristic before years of interdimensional isolation tempered his natural openness. "Happy to help. That's quite the impressive stack for one person. Short-staffed today," she explained with a resigned shrug that threatened her carefully balanced cargo. "My associate caught stomach flu from sampling uncooked potato croquettes. I told him, 'Wait, you're not from around here, are you?'" The observation came with refreshing directness rather than suspicion. That obvious, Naruto replied with self-deprecating humor. Well, you haven't heard of Jagamaru-kun, for starters. Plus. She tilted her head slightly, studying him with unexpected perceptiveness. You observe things differently. Most people see what they expect in the marketplace. You're cataloging what actually exists. The insight surprised Naruto. Most civilians lacked such observational acuity. Perceptive, he acknowledged, comes with the delivery territory, she explained, readjusting her grip on the crates. Anyway, thanks again for the save. If you're ever hungry, visit Jagamaru-kun in Central Park. Tell them Runoa sent you. First croquettes on me. With that, she continued her precarious journey through the crowd, leaving Naruto with unexpected smile tugging at his mouth. The brief interaction reinforced something he'd occasionally forgotten during years of isolated vigilance, that ordinary moments of human connection retained value even amid interdimensional crises. Continuing his circuit of the marketplace, Naruto maintained dual awareness, conscious of immediate surroundings while simultaneously mapping magical currents that flowed beneath Orario's physical infrastructure. These invisible energy streams had been his primary study during early months in this world. Their patterns revealing fundamental principles of how Orario's unique magical system interacted with the dimensional boundary separating it from his native reality. Today, those currents displayed subtle abnormalities, minute fluctuations in otherwise stable flows, like ripples disturbing placid water. Nothing catastrophic yet, but distinct deterioration compared to patterns observed even a week earlier. The convergence acceleration is becoming visible even at surface level, Kurama noted through their mental link. Concerning that effects manifest this far from the dungeon's deeper floors. Naruto mentally acknowledged this assessment while maintaining outward appearance of casual urban exploration. Their adjusted timeline might prove optimistic if degradation continued at current rates. Aiza's accelerated training schedule suddenly seemed less precautionary and more desperately necessary. His contemplation fragmented as instincts honed through decades of Hinobi experience triggered warning signals. Nothing obvious, no killing intent or direct observation, but subtle shift in ambient energy suggesting approach of significant magical presence. Naruto continued his pace without revealing awareness, senses extending to identify the source. Within moments, he pinpointed it, a platinum blonde female elf moving with exceptional grace through the market crowd. Her emerald eyes occasionally scanning surroundings with professional thoroughness disguised as casual awareness. Her appearance marked her as adventurer rather than civilian, lightweight armor beneath a forest green cloak. A staff of unusual design secured across her back, and the confident posture of someone accustomed to combat situations. Most notably, she wore the distinctive silver emblem of Estrella Familia, the familia dedicated to justice that maintained significant influence within Orario despite its relatively small membership. Ryuu Lion. Naruto recognized her immediately from intelligence briefings Ilga had provided, renowned mid-level adventurer known for exceptional combat ethics and unwavering devotion to her goddess's principles. Currently level 4, according to available information, with particular expertise in wind-enhanced close combat techniques. Her presence near his location seemed unlikely coincidental. Either Ilga had informed her of his scheduled reconnaissance, NCE possible but improbable given operational security protocols, or she possessed exceptional sensing abilities that detected his unique energy signature despite careful suppression, more concerning implication. Rather than evade potential contact, Naruto decided to evaluate her capabilities directly. He altered his route subtly, selecting path that would create natural intersection at a spec. ELT weapon vendor's stall. Neutral territory that offered plausible explanation for both their presences. The vendor, a burly dwarf with intricate burn scars decorating muscular forearms, displayed remarkable craftsmanship in blades designed specifically for monster materials harvesting. Naruto examined these with genuine interest, appreciating technical innovations that addressed specialized adventuring needs unknown in his world. Interested in precision cutting, the vendor observed, noting Naruto's focus on a particularly elegant short blade designed for scale removal. That's Tsubaki's work, graduated apprentice of Hephaestus herself. Holds edge even against level 3 monster hide. Impressive balance, Naruto commented truthfully, testing the blade's weight distribution with experienced assessment. The metal composition is unusual. The dwarf's eyebrows rose appreciatively at the technical observation. Good eye. Adamantite core with mithril folded outer layers. Allows flex. Ability without sacrificing cutting power. Naruto sensed Ryu's approach before seeing her, her controlled magical presence now directed specifically toward his location rather than general scanning. She arrived with impeccable timing that suggested both calculation and social awareness, not interrupting the existing conversation but positioning herself within natural conversational range while examining adjacent merchandise. The craftsmanship has improved significantly since last season, she observed to the vendor, her melodic voice carrying subtle accent that distinguished high elves from their woodland cousins. Tsubaki's influence on your work becomes more apparent. Lady Lion. The vendor's professional demeanor warmed instantly. An honor as always. Yes, my daughter's been inco. RPO rating techniques from her apprenticeship. Caught that, did you? The distinctive fuller pattern is unmistakable, Ryu replied with precise technical accuracy that revealed genuine knowledge rather than conversational courtesy. The interaction provided Naruto opportunity to observe her directly while maintaining pretense of continued merchandise examination. Her appearance matched Intellige. NCE reports. Striking even by elven standards, with features suggesting both nobility and hardship that created compelling contradiction. Most notable were her eyes, intense emerald that evaluated every thing with combination of tactical assessment and ethical consideration unique to those who balanced combat profession against moral framework. Whether by coincidence or calculation, the conversation naturally expanded to include him as the vendor gestured toward the blade Naruto had been examining. This gentleman has excellent eye for quality as well. Recognized the specialized alloy immediately. Ryu turned toward Naruto with perfectly calibrated social courtesy that nonetheless contained unmistakable evaluative undertone. Uncommon technical knowledge for a visitor to Orario, she observed. Neither accusation nor simple observation but something balanced between. I appreciate good craftsmanship, Naruto replied with matching neutrality, adding calculated revelation, though the metallurgical techniques differ considerably from my homeland's traditions. And where would that be? She inquired with seemingly casual interest belied by the focused attention behind her composed expression. Far Eastern territories, Naruto answered, technically accurate while deliberately vague. Beyond the Divine Mountains. The geographical reference represented calculated test. The region existed in maps but remained largely unexplored by Orario adventurers, providing plausible origin that would be difficult to immediately verify while observing her reaction to the claim. Something flickered across her features, not suspicion but recognition that he had provided answer specifically designed to avoid verification. Rather than press directly, she shifted approach with impressive conversational agility. The Eastern forging traditions favor different blade geometries than Orario's standard, I believe. Curved single-edge designs rather than our straight dual-edge approach. The observation demonstrated genuine knowledge of comparative weaponsmithing rather than conversational deflection, raising Naruto's estimation of her technical background. Correct, he acknowledged, sitting to offer substantive response rather than continued deflection. The katana tradition emphasizes cutting mechanics that maximize effectiveness with minimal material requirements. Their exchange. GE continued with surprisingly detailed technical discussion of comparative metallurgical traditions, each response containing subtle layers, surface conversation about bladesmithing techniques while underlying evaluation of each other's knowledge base and potential threat assessment proceeded simultaneously. The vendor observed their interaction with growing confusion, clearly sensing currents beyond his comprehension flowing beneath seemingly ordinary conversation. Well, he finally interrupted as conversation reached natural pause, I should check inventory in the back. Feel free to examine any merchandise that interests you. His retreat created momentary privacy within public setting, opportunity Ryu immediately utilized with characteristic directness. You're him, aren't you? The wild sage who rescued the Soma Familia adventurer. The question came without preamble but also without hostility, simple confirmation of information already substantially verified through observation. Naruto weighed potential responses against operational security requirements, calculating that confirmed identity within limited parameters offered greater tactical advantage than continued denial. That would inevitably fail against her evident investigative capabilities. Word travels quickly in Orario, he observed neutrally. Justice requires awareness, Ryuu replied, the phrase carrying ritualistic quality suggesting a strea familia motto rather than personal philosophy, especially regarding individuals capable of neutralizing modified monsters that defeated a level 3 adventurer. The statement contained both acknowledgement and indirect query regarding his capabilities, professional assessment rather than idle curiosity. Sometimes being in the right place at the right time makes more difference than personal ability, Naruto offered, deflection through modesty rather than outright denial. A subtle shift in her expression suggested the response registered as tactical choice rather than genuine self-assessment. Indeed, just as sometimes being in Orario's central marketplace during morning hours occurs through pure coincidence rather than deliberate information gathering. The gentle challenge demonstrated perceptiveness that exceeded Naruto's initial estimation of her capabilities. Rather than continue increasingly transparent conversational sparring, he decided, direct approach better served operational objectives. Perhaps we should continue this conversation somewhere less public, he suggested, placing the blade back on display rack with careful precision. If the Estrella Familia has official interest in recent monster behavioral modifications. Ryu's expression revealed nothing, but her slight nod conveyed both acceptance of direct approach and confirmation that her presence represented formal familia inquiry rather than personal curiosity. The Estrella Familia maintains a private consultation room at the guild headquarters, she proposed. Neutral territory with appropriate privacy protocols. The suggestion represented reasonable compromise. Guild territory provided her institutional security while offering him legitimate forum for information exchange that advanced overall mission objectives without compromising operational security. Lead the way, Naruto agreed, gesturing for her to precede him, courtesy that simultaneously allowed him to maintain awareness of her positioning while they navigated Orario's increasingly crowded morning streets. As they walked, Naruto noticed increasing recognition among passing adventurers, not of him, but distinct respect accorded to Ryuu as they moved through districts surrounding the guild headquarters. Her Estrella Familia affiliation clearly carried significant weight within Orario's adventurer community, suggesting influence exceeding their relatively modest size compared to larger familias like Loki or Freya. The guild's imposing headquarters dominated its section of the city, BLE columns supporting elaborate facade that blended architectural elements from multiple cultural traditions into harmonious whole. Inside, administrative efficiency maintained impressive order despite hundreds of adventurers conducting daily business, registering expeditions, reporting monster activities, collecting bounties, and accessing various support services that facilitated Orario's dungeon-based economy. Ryuu navigated this controlled chaos with practiced familiarity, guild staff acknowledging her with respectful nods as she led Naruto toward a side corridor reserved for official business. The consultation room she selected offered both privacy and security, magical dampening built into its walls preventing external monitoring while comfortable furnishings suggested diplomatic rather than interrogative purpose. Please, she gestured toward appropriate seating once they were alone, her formal courtesy containing genuine respect rather than mere protocol. The wild sage has become subject of considerable interest since your appearance at the Pantheon 3 days ago. Naruto accepted the offered chair, evaluating optimal information exchange parameters while maintaining necessary operational security. Reputation often exceeds reality, he observed neutrally, especially in city where adventure narratives carry premium value. Perhaps, Ryuu acknowledged, seating herself with perfect posture that suggested formal training beyond mere combat disciplines. Yet multiple witnesses confirm you neutralized modified monsters displaying tactical coordination previously unobserved in surface species. The guild considers such developments significant enough to warrant formal investigation. And the Estrella Familia's interest? Naruto inquired, redirecting conversation to establish her specific objectives. Justice requires understanding threats before they expand, she replied with clear sincerity rather than rehearsed response. Modified monsters targeting civilians rather than remaining within established territorial boundaries represents fundamental shift in Orario's security parameters. The answer aligned with known Estrella Familia operational philosophy. proactive monitoring of potential threats to civilian population rather than reactive response to established emergencies. Their reputation as Orario's conscience had substantial factual foundation. Despite occasionally idealistic presentation, the modifications aren't random mutations, Naruto stated, offering substantive information that advanced shared objectives without compromising crucial operational details. They demonstrate coordinated evolutionary direction suggesting external influence rather than natural adaptation. Ryu's expression remained professionally composed, but subtle indicators, slightly increased attention posture, minutely dilated pupils, suggested the assessment confirmed existing suspicions rather than presenting entirely new information. The Guild's Reseer CH division has documented similar conclusions from dungeon specimen analysis, she confirmed, offering reciprocal information exchange that established cooperative rather than adversarial dynamic. Multiple monster species across different floors exhibit synchronized modifications despite lacking natural contact opportunities. This confirmation validated intelligence received through Ilgaz Cha NNELS while providing additional verification from independent sources, valuable operational cross-reference that enhanced overall threat assessment accuracy. Has the Estrella Familia conducted direct observation of modified specimens within the dungeon environment? Naruto inquired, seeking field intelligence beyond institutional analysis. 3 expeditions within past month, Ryu confirmed WITH precise recall suggesting direct participation. Floors 12, 18, and most recently 24. Each revealed progressively sophisticated behavioral adaptations alongside physiological modifications. She hesitated momentarily, evaluating appropriate disclosure levels before continuing. The most concerning development appears on floor 24, where specimens display rudimentary energy manipulation capabilities beyond normal magical parameters. This revelation aligned precisely with Naruto's theoretical models regarding chakra influence bleeding through dimensional boundaries. Monsters inadvertently absorbing and adapting capabilities from his native reality as convergence progressed. Energy manipulation specifically how, he prompted, seeking crucial technical details. While maintaining appearance of general inquiry. Externalized force projection without standard magical circle formation, Ryu elaborated, clearly recognizing the question's significance despite its casual presentation. Directed energy bursts from physical contact points rather than spell-casting focal structures. Our magic specialists lack classification framework for the observed phenomena. Perfect description of rudimentary chakra utilization, precisely the concerning development Naruto had hypothesized based on theoretical convergence models. The timeline compression appeared justified by field evidence rather than excessive caution. Their exchange continued with increasingly substantive information sharing, each clearly recognizing mutual benefit in cooperative intelligence meant despite maintained operational boundaries. Ryu provided detailed field observations from Estrella Familia expeditions while Naruto offered analytical framework for understanding evolutionary patterns without revealing their dimensional origin. Nearly an hour into their discussion, the consultation room door opened without preliminary knock, unusual breach of protocol that immediately captured both their attentions. A guild official entered with visible urgency that overrode standard courtesy requirements. Lady Lion, he addressed Ryu with respectful but abbreviated formality, Emerg. NC situation requires immediate Estrella Familia response. Expedition team trapped on 24th floor following unexplained structural collapse. Multiple adventurers reported injured, including 3 Estrella members. Ryu rose immediately, professional composure unchanged despite the personal implication of Familia members in danger. Available response resources, limited, the official admitted with genuine regret. Major expedition from Ganesha Familia departed at dawn toward deeper floors. Loki Familia representatives are currently beyond contact range in northwestern quadrant. Timated standard response time exceeds 4 hours. Unacceptable given reported injuries, Ryu concluded decisively. I'll proceed immediately with available resources. Her gaze shifted to Naruto, evaluating rather than requesting. Your capabilities would prove valuable in extraction scenario with unknown monster variables. The indirect invitation represented significant trust extension given their limited interaction, or recognition of desperate circumstance requiring extraordinary measures. Either interpretation suggested genuine emergency rather than elaborately staged information-gathering opportunity. All assist. Naruto responded without hesitation. Operational security concerns secondary to immediate humanitarian requirements. Civilian protection represented core value transcending dimensional or organizational boundaries. Ryuu acknowledged with single efficient nod before returning attention to guild official. Prepare emergency authorization for non-registered advent. Support under Estrella Familia Provisional Authority. We depart in 15 minutes from main entrance. The official hurried to comply, clearly recognizing both urgency and the exceptional nature of involving non-registered participant in official emergency response. Once alone again, Ryuu provided concise tactical briefing, 24th floor characteristics, known monster species distributions, and structural vulnerabilities that might complicate extraction operations. Throughout this exchange, Naruto noted her exceptional informational efficiency, prioritizing survival-critical details, while omitting unnecessary background that could distract from immediate operational requirements. The Estrella members, he inquired as they prepared to depart, special capabilities I should be aware of for coordination purposes. Elise Level 4, specializes in fire aspect magic with area effect capabilities, Ryuu replied without referencing notes, demonstrating impressive recall. Kagaya Naza, Level 3, advanced healing capabilities but limited combat effectiveness. Lyra Welker, Level 3, earth manipulation useful for structural reinforcement during extraction. The information established clear tactical profile, balanced party designed for exploration rather than heavy combat, with complementary magical capabilities that should have proven adequate for standard 24th floor challenges absent unexpected complications. And yourself? Naruto prompted, seeking specific capability parameters rather than general reputation assessment. Level 4, Wind and Physical Combat Specialization. She stated without false modesty or exaggeration. Limited healing capabilities sufficient for field stabilization but not major trauma resolution. The self-assessment aligned WI/TH intelligence reports while providing additional tactical detail relevant to their impending operation. As they departed the consultation room, Naruto noted Ryuu's seamless transition from investigative mode to emergency response, professional compartmentalization that reflected extensive experience with crisis management despite her relatively young age by Elven standards. They proceeded through H Guild headquarters toward the main entrance, administrative staff clearing path with efficient recognition of emergency protocols. Outside, small group awaited, 2 adventurers in Estrella Familia call. Oars preparing equipment with practiced urgency rather than panic. Lyra and Kagaya are among those trapped, Ryuu explained tersely as they approached the assembled team. Elise remained on surface UE to equipment maintenance requirements. The fire specialist looked up at their approach, relief visible as she recognized Ryuu before curiosity replaced it upon noticing Naruto. Response team assembled as requested. She reported professionally before adding with barely concealed concern, any update on their condition? Stable but deteriorating, Ryuu replied with compassionate directness rather than false reassurance. Structural collapse has them contained with limited oxygen circulation. Primary extraction challenge involves unstable sealing components threatening secondary collapse upon intervention. She gestured toward Naruto with concise introduction, field specialist with monster behavioral expertise and combat capabilities. Guild authorized temporary attachment under emergency protocols. Elise evaluated him with quick professional assessment rather than skepticism, recognizing emergency circumstances superseded normal procedural requirements. Welcome aboard. NEE. Experience with 24th floor environments. Limited. Naruto acknowledged honestly, unnecessary deception potentially endangering mission success. But extensive background with structural reinforcement techniques and extraction operations in unstable environments. This represented truthful adaptation of his shinobi experience rather than fabrication. Anbu operations had frequently involved similar extraction scenarios, albeit in different contextual environments. Good enough, Elise determined with decisive practicality. We move in 5 minutes. Standard emergency deployment through west entrance. Prioritizing speed over stealth given reported injured status. The operational briefing continued with impressive efficiency as equipment was distributed and communication protocols established. Throughout preparation, Naruto observed Estrella Familia's operational culture with professional appreciation, their procedures reflecting ethical framework that balanced mission objectives against personnel safety without sacrificing either to expediency. Within designated timeline, their expanded rescue team departed guild headquarters toward Babel Tower, the massive structure marking dungeon entrance at Orario's center. Emergency authorization from guild administration facilitated expedited processing through normal entry checkpoints, allowing immediate descent toward their objective without bureaucratic delays. As they navigated upper dungeon levels with practiced efficiency, Naruto maintained dual awareness, contributing appropriately to immediate tactical requirements while simultaneously monitoring interdimensional energy fluctuations that permeated the environment with increasing intensity as they descended. The dungeon itself presented fascinating study in diamonds. Ional physics. Not merely underground labyrinth as casual description suggested, but complex reality construct operating under modified natural laws. Each descending floor exhibited subtle differences in fundamental physical constants alongside obvious environmental variations, gravity, atmospheric composition, and most significantly, the boundary thickness between dimensions. The convergence effects intensify with depth. Kurama observed through their mental link as they reached the 15th floor. Expected given proximity to dimensional fault line, but progression rate exceeds previous observations. Naruto mentally acknowledged this assessment while maintaining external focus on their immediate tactical environment. The accelerated convergence validated their compressed preparity on timeline while raising concerning implications for available intervention window before catastrophic boundary collapse. Their descent continued without significant monster engagement, unusual Sir Q.M. stance explained by recent Ganesha Familia expedition clearing most immediate threats. This operational advantage allowed faster progress than standard rescue parameters would suggest, though Ryuu maintained appropriate tactical awareness rather than allowing optimistic acceleration to compromise security protocols. Upon reaching the 22nd floor, environmental conditions shifted. Notice A.B. Lee, ambient lighting dimming despite unchanged physical illumination sources, air pressure fluctuating in patterns suggesting localized gravitational anomalies, and most significantly, visible distortions in spatial continuity that manifested as subtle warping of perspective along extended sight lines. Something's wrong, Elise noted with professional concern, extending her hand toward nearby wall. Where stone surface rippled subtly upon proximity. Environmental instability beyond normal parameters for this depth. Temporal distortion effects, the dwarf member of their team, introduced earlier as Dormiel, confirmed. Consulting specialized instrument from his equipment pack. Similar to anomalies reported by research teams last week, but significantly intensified. Ryuu exchanged meaningful glance with Naruto. Both recognizing these phenomena aligned precisely with convergence acceleration markers discussed during their earlier intelligence exchange. Proceed with enhanced caution, she instructed the team. Unnecessary elaboration avoided in favor of efficient directive. Maintain minimum 2-meter spacing to avoid synchronized temporal effects if distortion field activates. Tactical adjustment demonstrated both experience with the reported anomalies and practical adaptation to their potential impact. Impressive field leadership that reinforced Naruto's positive assessment of her operational capabilities. As they approached the 24th floor entrance, communication device attached to Elisa's equipment activated with burst of static followed by fragmented voice transmission. Oxygen levels declining. Structural integrity compromised at Junction 7, modified monsters gathering outside containment zone. The broken transmission contained sufficient information to establish critical deterioration since initial emergency notification. Elise immediately increased their pace while maintaining necessary tactical precautions, leadership decisions balancing urgency against security requirements with professional precision. Emerging onto the 24th floor proper revealed environment significantly altered from standard configuration described in briefing materials. Normal cavernous expanse had transformed through partial collapse into labyrinthine structure of fallen stone and crystalline formations that created unnatural angles throughout visible terrain. Most concerning, Faint reddish energy patterns pulsed through certain crystalline structures, unmistakable signature of chakra-influenced manifestations rather than natural dungeon phenomena. Collapse pattern is unnatural, Dormule observed with professional assessment based on engineering expertise. Structural failures occurred along synchronized fracture lines despite varied material composition, statistically impossible through random distribution. Deliberate, Ryuu concluded succinctly, verbalizing assessment Naruto had already formed. Coordinated monster activity rather than natural dungeon evolution. Their analysis found immediate confirmation as they navigated deeper into the affected region. Evidence of organized monster activity appeared throughout, straight GIC positioning of debris creating channelized movement corridors, systematic destruction of potential escape routes, and most tellingly, tactical placement of remaining access points suggesting ambush. Preparation rather than random destruction. They're hunting, Naruto stated, recognizing patterns familiar from shinobi tactical operations. Creating contained environment to isolate targets from reinforcement while establishing controlled engagement parameters. The assessment drew sharp attention from the entire team, its implications representing paradigm shift in understanding monster behavioral evolution rather than mere tactical observation. Monsters don't hunt adventurers specifically, Elise stated, not challenging Naruto's conclusion but seeking clarification for apparent contradiction with established understanding. They respond to presence but don't create elaborate containment scenarios. These do, Naruto replied simply, pointing toward nearby debris arrangement. Fallen stones created one-way access point with clear fields of fire covering approach vectors, textbook ambush configuration requiring abstract spatial reasoning beyond instinctive behavior patterns. Before further discussion could develop, Ryuu raised hand for silence, her enhanced hearing detecting sounds beyond normal perceptual range. Movement ahead, she reported quietly. Multiple entities, coordinated positioning. Not our trapped team. Tactical situation crystallized immediately. They had reached monster perimeter established around the contained adventurers. Direct approach would trigger prepared ambush designed to neutralize rescue attempts through coordinated response rather than individual monster aggression. Standard approach compromised, Elise assessed professionally. Immediate adaptation replacing rigid adherence to planned methodology. Alternative extraction options. Naruto evaluated their tactical environment with experienced assessment, identifying potential solution that leveraged his unique capabilities while maintaining operational security regarding their specific nature. I can establish rear access approach, he offered, indicating rock formation extending above the ambush zone. Create distraction drawing primary force toward obvious approach vector while extraction team enters through secondary access point. The proposal represented stand. Ard shinobi infiltration tactic adapted to current environment, division of enemy forces through controlled engagement while primary objective achieved through misdirection rather than direct confrontation. Ryuu immediately grasped the tactical concept, adding refinement. Wind manipulation could create sufficient acoustic distraction from northeastern quadrant, drawing attention while main team approaches from western vector where structural configuration provides maximum concealment. Their seamless tactical integration demonstrated natural operational compatibility despite limited prior coordination. Professional recognition of complementary capabilities transcending organizational boundaries. Elise evaluated their proposal against standard protocols, leadership responsibility requiring thorough assessment rather than immediate adoption. After brief consideration, she nodded decisively. Proceed with modified approach. Dormule and I will maintain position as secondary response force, while you two implement primary extraction. The delegation represented significant trust extension given limited prior interaction, recognition of specialized capabilities rather than hierarchical adherence to established authority structures. This operational flexibility further distinguished Estrella Familia's professional culture from more rigid organizations Naruto had encountered during intelligence gathering. Implementation proceeded with practiced efficiency despite their improvised collaboration. Naruto established elevated position overlooking the ambush zone while Ryuu prepared wind manipulation technique designed to create acoustic distraction without revealing adventurer presence. Magical application demonstrating technical sophistication beyond standard combat applications. Communication maintained through hand signals established during their approach, Naruto indicated readiness before Ryuu activated her technique. The resulting disturbance, howling wind creating cascading debris effects that simulated multiple approaching entities, immediately drew monster attention toward northeastern approach vector as anticipated. Naruto observed the response with tactical assessment that confirmed his earlier conclusions regarding coordinated behavior. Rather than individual reactions, the monsters, primarily enhanced versions of standard 24th floor species, moved with unmistakable unit cohesion, establishing defensive positions along anticipated approach corridors while maintaining communication through sub-vocalized sounds outside normal monster behavioral patterns. Most significantly, several larger specimens directed the response rather than participating directly, command structure indicating hierarchical organization beyond any previously documented Mons. Chair society within the dungeon environment. They're developing into coordinated fighting force, Kurama observed through their mental link. Chakra influence accelerating both individual capabilities and group tactical development. This assessment aligned precisely with theoretical models regarding convergence effects, chakra bleeding through weakened dimensional boundaries influencing Nati. Vey organisms toward patterns reflecting shinobi world social structures alongside individual capability enhancements. With primary monster force redirected toward the distraction, Naruto and Ryuu sended toward the western approach vector, moving with complementary stealth techniques that minimized detection probability. Their advance revealed additional evidence of deliberate containment e.g. strategic debris placement creating one-way access corridors, trap mechanisms established at choke points, and most concerning, modified crystals functioning as sensory monitoring devices throughout the environment. Avoiding these surveillance mechanisms required specialized awareness Ryuu demonstrated without specific briefing, her enhanced perception apparently detecting the monitoring field through their magical resonance patterns. This capability suggested training beyond standard adventurer parameters, potentially indicating specialized familia development programs or individual aptitude exceeding her formal status level. They reached the containment zone perimeter approximately 12 minutes after initiating their approach. Remarkably efficient progress given environmental challenges. The trapped expedition became visible within partially collapsed chamber where ceiling components remained precariously balanced above injured adventurers who had established defensive position around central support column. Naruto identified 7 individuals, 4 from unknown familia based on their matching equipment styling, plus the 3 Estrella members Ryuu had described during briefing. Initial assessment confirmed multiple injuries of varying severity, with 2 adventurers appearing unconscious while others maintained defensive posture despite visible wounds. Ryuu's expressio revealed nothing beyond professional focus, emotional response to her endangered companions contained beneath operational discipline that impressed Naruto despite his extensive experience with shinobi emotional control protocols. Structural assessment. She requested quietly, prioritizing tactical requirements above personal concerns. Naruto evaluated the containment zone with specialized perception, identifying critical support points and potential failure vectors that would trigger catastrophic collapse upon improper intervention. Primary instability centers on northeastern support column. He determined after thorough analysis. Secondary collapse potential from southern ceiling section if vibration exceeds threshold parameters. Access possible through western face with appropriate reinforcement technique. This assessment represented adaptation of structural engineering principles learned during shinobi infrastructure operations rather than specialized dungeon knowledge, universal physical principles applied to specific environmental context. Ryuu processed this information with immediate application focus rather than questioning its origin or accuracy. Wind manipulati. On could temporarily support ceiling section during extraction if precisely applied. Viable approach. Naruto confirmed, mentally calculating combined capability parameters based on observed demons. Tration of her wind techniques during their approach. I can establish primary support at critical juncture while you create extraction corridor through western face. Their collaborative planning continued with impressive efficiency, each contributing specialized knowledge within integrated tactical framework that maximized their complementary capabilities. Final approach vector established, the Y advanced toward the containment zone with coordinated movement that maintained both stealth parameters and optimal positioning for immediate implementation upon arrival. The trapped adventurers detected their approach despite stealth precautions, testament to their professional awareness even under extreme duress. Weapons raised in defensive preparation before Ryuu established recognition through subtle hand signal that identified Estrella Familia affiliation without creating noise that might alert nearby monster patrols. Relief visibly transformed the defenders' posture, though discipline maintained appropriate tactical awareness rather than emotional celebration that might compromise operational security. The conscious Estrella members, Lyra Welker based on equipment configuration matchy. Briefing description, immediately signaled structural information using Familia hand codes Ryuu translated for Naruto's benefit. Ceiling integrity degrading approximately 8% per hour, she reported concisely. Support column showing stress fractures along vertical axis. Monsters attempted 3 direct assaults before establishing perimeter containment strategy approximately 4 hours ago. The information confirmed Naruto's structural assessment while providing additional tactical context regarding monster behavioral evolution, their transition from direct engagement to strategic IC containment representing significant advancement beyond documented capabilities. With situation parameters established, extraction implementation began with practiced efficiency despite their improvised collaboration. Naruto positioned himself at critical structural juncture where ceiling components created maximum stress concentration, channeling chakra through specialized technique adapted or structural reinforcement rather than combat application. Simultaneously, Ryuu implemented precisely calibrated wind manipulation that created controlled erosion effect along western wall material. Removal occurring with surgical precision that maintained structural integrity while establishing evacuation corridor of sufficient dimensions for injured personnel extraction. Their complementary techniques functioned with remarkable synchronization despite no prior operational experience together, professional competence transcending organizational boundaries through shared commitment to effective crisis resolution. This operational compatibility created seamless extraction process where injured adventurers transferred through established corridor while temporary structural reinforcement prevented catastrophic collapse that would otherwise result from modified weight distribution. The extraction proceeded systematically, most severely injured first while those with remaining combat capability provided security against potential monster response to their activities. Naruto maintained constant structural assessment throughout the process, chakra application adjusting to changing stress patterns as personnel movement altered support requirements throughout the containment zone. Ryuu demonstrated equally impressive adaptation, her wind techniques maintaining precise pressure differentials that prevented both structural vibration and acoustic transmission that might alert monster patrols to their extraction activities. This technical precision exceeded standard combat application parameters, suggesting specialized training focused on control rather than raw power generation. As extraction neared completion, with only 3 remaining adventurers plus Ryuu and himself still within the containment zone, Naruto's enhanced perception detected approaching energy signatures from multiple vectors, monster patrols returning toward containment zone following determination that the northeastern distraction represented false target. Incoming hostiles, he reported concisely, maintaining structural reinforcement while simultaneously calculating tactical response options. Multiple approach vectors converging within approximately 3 minutes. Ryuu immediately adapted extraction prioritization, expediting remaining adventurer evacuation while maintaining essential structural support. You 3, move now. She directed the remaining expedition members. We'll cover withdrawal and follow once you've cleared the corridor. The professional authority in her instruction generated immediate compliance without question or hesitation, testament to Estrella Familia's reputation within adventurer community transcending direct organizational affiliation. As the final expeditee, members entered the extraction corridor, Ryuu positioned herself for defensive engagement against approaching monster forces. I'll maintain structural integrity, Naruto stated, continuing chakra application that prevented ceiling collapse despite increasing stress patterns. You control approach vectors until final extraction window. The tactical division leveraged their respective specializations while addressing primary mission requirements, maintaining extraction corridor viability while preventing monster interference with evacuating personnel. Ryuu acknowledged with efficient nod. E4 implementing defensive preparation utilizing environment configuration for optimal position advantage. Monster arrival occurred within predicted timeline, enhanced specimens entering containment zone through multiple access points with coordinated approach patterns indicating tactical communication rather than individual response mechanisms. Most notably, their formation demonstrated clear prioritization hierarchy, with specialized units positioned according to functional capabilities rather than random distribution. Ryuu engaged primary approach vector with impressive combat efficiency. Her wind-enhanced attacks creating precisely calculated effect patterns that maximized environmental interaction rather than relying on raw magical power. Debris became secondary projectiles, air-pre-S sure differentials created momentary disorientation effects, and most impressively, sound wave manipulation disrupted apparent communication signals between coordinated monster units. The effectiveness of her techniques demonstrated combat experience significantly exceeding formal status level, application innovation and tactical integration suggesting veteran capability despite her relatively young age by Elven standards. Most notably, her fighting style incorporated ethical constraints even under tactical pressure, techniques designed to neutralize threats without unnecessary suffering or collateral damage. Naruto maintained primary focus on structural reinforcement while allocating limited attention to secondary defensive requirements, chakra-enhanced perception tracking additional approach. Och vectors beyond Ryu's immediate engagement zone. When breakthrough attempt materialized from southern access point, he temporarily split concentration to implement countering technique without compromising structural support function. The resulting shadow clone materialized with minimal visible formation process, operational security maintaining appropriate limitations even under tactical pressure. To external observation, his defensive response would appear as exceptionally rapid movement rather than technique-based duplication, preserving critical operational security regarding his specialized capabilities. Ryu noted this apparent speed with professional appreciation rather than distracting surprise, tactical adaptation incorporating this capability into her defensive approach without requiring explanation during active engagement. This operational flexibility further distinguished her combat proficiency from standard adventurer parameters, suggesting specialized training beyond normal familia development programs. Their collaborative defense maintained extraction corridor viability while increasingly sophisticated monster forces attempted containment breach through multiple approach vectors. As final expedition members cleared minimum safe distance through evacuation route, Naruto signaled transition to withdrawal phase with abbreviated hand gesture adapted from Anbu operational codes. Ryu immediately recognized the tactical shift despite unfamiliarity with specific signal meaning, contextual interpretation demonstrating exceptional battlefield awareness beyond technical combat capabilities. Her defensive pattern adjusted to prioritize withdrawal coverage while maintaining necessary pressure against primary monster approach vectors. 30 seconds to structural support termination. Naruto informed her as they implemented coordinated withdrawal toward extraction corridor. Ceiling collapse will neutralize approximately 60% of pursuit capacity. Acknowledged. Ryu responded professionally, wind manipulation creating temporary pressure barrier across approach vectors that would provide critical seconds for their final extraction movement. Corridor integrity confirmed through complete withdrawal route. Their tactical communication maintained essential efficiency without unnecessary elaboration. Professional focus prioritizing missio N requirements above conversational convention. As they reached extraction corridor entrance, Naruto prepared specialized technique that would allow controlled structural collapse following their depa. RTURE while minimizing pursuit possibility through resulting debris configuration. Ready, he signaled as they entered the corridor together, maintaining final structural support until precise withdrawal position achieved. Initiating controlled collapse on your mark. Ryu established optimal position before signaling readiness, her wind manipulation prepared to manage resulting pressure wave that would accompany structural failure. Their synchronized countdown culminated in precisely coordinated techniques, Naruto releasing structural support through controlled chakra dissipation while Ryu's wind manipulation directed resulting collapse energy away from their withdrawal route. The containment zone collapsed with impressive precision, debris configuration creating pursuit barrier without compromising surrounding structural integrity that might trigger cascading failure throughout the floor region. As they proceeded through extraction corridor toward rendezvous point, Naruto noted Use technical precision during the coordinated maneuver, her wind manipulation demonstrating understanding of pressure physics beyond standard magical application parameters. Impressive technique control, he commented as they reached safe distance from collapse zone, professional appreciation rather than casual compliment. Particularly the acoustic disruption effect against their coordination signals. Ryuu acknowledged with modest nod that nonetheless contained appropriate professional pride. Your structural reinforcement was equally noteworthy. I've never observed similar technique AP. Plication within standard adventurer parameters. The mutual recognition established professional respect foundation beyond immediate tactical necessity, appreciation of specialized capabilities that transcended organizational boundaries or background differences. This operational compatibility created natural conversation progression as they proceeded toward rendezvous point where Elise and Rime Ning team members awaited with extracted expedition personnel. Your fighting style incorporates interesting ethical constraints, Naruto observed, noting pattern that distinguished her approach from typical adventurer combat methodology. Neutralization prioritized over termination even under tactical pressure. The observation might have seemed casual, but contained deliberate evaluation of her operational philosophy, determining alignment with core ethical principles that would influence potential future collaboration parameters. Justice requires proportional response, Ryuu replied without hesitation. The principle clearly representing fundamental rather than situational philosophy. Even corrupted monsters deserve consideration as victims of external influence rather than inherently malicious entities. This perspective aligned precisely with Naruto's own ethical framework, particularly relevant given his understanding of the corrupting influence responsible for the monster's evolutionary trajectory. The philosophical compatibility reinforced his positive assessment of potential operational alignment beyond immediate extraction mission. Their arrival at Rendezvous Point temporarily suspended further discussion as immediate medical attention requirements took priority. The extracted expedition members had been stabilized through preliminary treatment, though several required advanced healing beyond field capabilities available through their current resources. Extraction success confirmed, Elise reported professionally as they rejoined the main group. All personnel recovered with survivable injuries. Immediate evacuation to surface recommended given continued environmental instability. This assessment aligned with tactical reality, increasing temporal distortion effects throughout the region suggested accelerating convergence influence that might compromise standard evacuation routes if departure delayed unnecessarily. Ryuu immediately authorized withdrawal implementation, her field leadership seamlessly integrating with Elise's operational authority without bureaucratic complications that might delay critical decision execution. The evacuation proceeded with impressive efficiency, injured personnel transported through optimal routes identified during their approach, while defensive formations maintained appropriate security against potential monster interception attempts. Throughout withdrawal operation, Naruto noted continued professional integration between himself and the Estrella team, his capabilities incorporated into tactical planning without requiring extensive explanation or justification. This operational compatibility created natural leadership dynamic where specialized knowledge received appropriate consideration regardless of organizational affiliation or formal status designation. Most notably, Ryuu and Elise demonstrated exceptional command flexibility, adjusting tactical approach based on emerging information rather than rigid adherence to predetermined methodologies. Their ascent through dungeon levels proceeded without significant opposition, unusual circumstance potentially attributable to widespread temporal distortion effects disrupting normal monster behavioral patterns throughout affected regions. This fortunate development allowed faster evacuation pace than standard protocols would predict, though appropriate tactical awareness maintained despite apparent environmental advantage. Upon reaching Babel Tower access point approximately 70 minutes after initiating withdrawal, Guild Emergency Respawn personnel immediately assumed responsibility for injured adventurers requiring specialized medical attention. The formal mission conclusion triggered standard debriefing protocols where Estrella Elia representatives provided official report regarding extraction operation and environmental observations with particular emphasis on unusual monster behavioral patterns and structural anomalies. Throughout this administrative process, Naruto maintained appropriate background position, providing necessary information when directly addressed while avoiding unnecessary attention that might complicate operational security parameters. This calculated approach allowed fulfillment of humanitarian assistance objectives without compromising long-term strategic requirements regarding his limited public exposure within Orario. As debriefing concluded and emergency response transitioned to standard administrative processing, Ryuu approached Naruto with professional courtesy that nonetheless contained genuine appreciation beneath formal expression. "Your assistance proved invaluable to successful extraction," she stated directly, Elven cultural norms prioritizing sincere acknowledgement above social convention. The Estrella Familia recognizes this contribution with appropriate gratitude. The formal phrasing contains sincere recognition rather than mere protocol fulfillment, genuine appreciation from someone whose professional standards clearly maintained exceptional threshold for acknowledged competence. Mutual cooperation served shared objectives, Naruto replied with matching sincerity. Recognizing opportunity for potential alliance development beyond immediate extraction requirements. Your team's operational proficiency facilitated effective integration despite limited prior coordination. This professional acknowledgement established foundation for potential future collaboration without requiring specific commitments beyond immediate circumstance. Ryuu appeared to recognize this intentional opening, her response maintaining appropriate operational boundaries while indicating receptiveness to continued professional exchange. The unusual monster behavioral patterns warrant further investigation beyond standard guild protocols, she observed neutrally, in direct reference to their earlier conversation regarding coordinated evolutionary developments. Perhaps continued information exchange would serve mutual interests regarding these concerning developments. The proposal represented carefully calibrated alliance extension, professional collaboration offer without premature commitment to specific operational parameters or intelligence sharing beyond mutually beneficial scope. This measured approach further confirmed Naruto's positive assessment of her strategic acumen complementing obvious tactical capabilities. "I maintain particular interest in the temporal distortion effects accompanying these behavioral modifications," Naruto replied, accepting the collaboration proposal within appropriate limitations. "Your familia's observational access provides valuable field data unavailable through other sources." This exchange established preliminary framework for continued professional interaction without compromising either's existing operational commitments or organizational security requirements. The mutual benefit foundation created sustainable alliance potential extending beyond immediate crisis response while maintaining necessary independence for both parties. Their conversation might have continued further had unexpected interruption materialized in form of striking female figure approaching with confident directness that scattered guild personnel from her path despite lacking obvious aggression. Her appearance immediately identified her profession. Hammer secured across her back, specialized apron bearing distinctive forge patterns, and most notably, eye patch covering left eye in manner suggesting battle injury rather than birth defect. "So you're the mysterious forest sage everyone's whispering about," she declared without preamble, stopping directly before Naruto with evaluative posture that somehow managed professional assessment without personal intrusion. Interesting techniques during that extraction operation, based on preliminary reports. The newcomer's directness contained professional interest rather than casual curiosity. Her observational focus centered on equipment details and movement patterns suggesting technical evaluation rather than general speculation. Most notably, her single visible IT racked his hand positioning with specialized attention indicating recognition of unfamiliar technique foundations rather than standard adventurer methodology. Tsubaki Colbrand, Ryuu provided introductory context with professional courtesy. "Master Smith of the Hephaestus Familia. This is the Wild Sage." "Yes," Tsubaki completed with dismissive wave suggesting nomenclature held secondary importance compared to technical capabilities. "More interested in those reinforcement techniques you implemented. Materials science applications beyond current Orario engineering parameters, according to observer descriptions." Her technical focus represented potential security concern regarding specialized capabilities observation, though her interest appeared centered on engineering applications rather than underlying chakra methodology. This distinction suggested opportunity for limited knowledge exchange that might serve operational objectives without compromising critical security parameters. Structural reinforcement represents specialized application of energy manipulation principles, Naruto acknowledged without specific technique elaboration. Adaptation of homeland methodologies, rather than innovation developed locally. This limited disclosure provided framework for professional exchange without revealing crucial operational details regarding chakra fundamentals or interdimensional origins. Tsubaki's response demonstrated immediate grasp of technical implications despite deliberately vague description. Energy manipulation affecting molecular cohesion properties rather than gross structural reinforcement. She concluded with impressive inferential accuracy. Fascinating application potential for specialized crafting processes beyond standard enchantment methodologies. Her technical acumen exceeded standard craftsman parameters, suggesting specialized knowledge base potentially valuable for adaptive equipment development that might address convergence influx. Threats through innovative application methodologies. This potential resource aligned with operational requirements for specialized equipment capable of addressing interdimensional entities through conventional appearing methodologies. Their conversation continued with increasingly technical exchange regarding materials science applications of energy manipulation principles, Naruto providing limited conceptual framework while Tsubaki supplied innovative application possibilities based on existing Orario crafting traditions. Throughout this discussion, Ryuu maintained observational presence that provided both witness credibility and professional context without unnecessary interruption of productive technical exchange. As their discussion progressed, Naruto became increasingly aware of observation from elevated position within Babel Tower's upper galleries, familiar presence identified through enhanced perception despite considerable distance separation. Wallenstein watched their interaction with characteristic outward composure that nonetheless contained emotional complexity beyond her typically reserved expression. Her training schedule had provided morning independent cities rather than direct instruction today, necessary adaptation to allow his emergency response participation without compromising her accelerated development program. This unexpected observation RT Unity potentially provided valuable context regarding his operational methodology beyond controlled training environment, beneficial educational experience despite temporary instruction interruption. Yet her observation contained emotional components exceeding professional assessment, subtle indicators suggesting complex reaction to his operational integration with Ryuu and subsequent technical exchange with Tsubaki. Not simple jealousy as might develop from adolescent attachment, but more nuanced response involving professional territory considerations alongside personal connection elements. Developed through their intensive training relationship, Naruto filed this observation for future consideration while maintaining appropriate focus on immediate interaction with potential operational assets. The technical exchange with Tsubaki concluded with preliminary agreement regarding specialized equipment development consultation, limited collaboration that might provide valuable adaptive sources without requiring comprehensive disclosure regarding underlying theoretical frameworks. As administrative processing completed and organizational responsibilities resumed normal parameters, Ryuu extended formal appreciation for emergency assistance while establishing discrete communication protocol for their agreed information exchange regarding monster behavioral developments. This professional arrangement created foundation for operational alliance without compromising either's existing commitments or security requirements. Departing Babel Tower following necessary administrative completion, Naruto maintained awareness of Aiza's continued observation until distance rendered direct visual contact impossible. Her training would resume tomorrow with accelerated combat application timeline compression requiring intensive implementation despite theoretical concerns regarding pathway stabilization requirements. The day's developments had provided valuable operational context, alongside potential alliance resources exceeding initial mission parameters. Ryuu Lion's professional capabilities and ethical framework created promising collaboration potential regarding monster behavioral monitoring. While Tsubaki Colbrand's technical expertise offered specialized equipment development possibilities addressing convergence-influenced threats through conventional appearing methodologies. Most significantly, the extraction operation had confirmed theoretical models regarding accelerating convergence effects, temporal distortion and coordinated monster behavioral evolution, demonstrating precisely predicted patterns requiring compressed intervention timeline rather than conservative preparation approach. A.'s Wallenstein's accelerated training program had become Operation Al necessity rather than precautionary adaptation, her unique capability development representing crucial component addressing interdimensional threat through hybrid methodology transcending conventional response limitations. As Naruto departed Orario through Western Gate, returning toward forest territory containing his primary operational base, enhanced perception detected subtle energy fluctuate ion throughout the city's magical infrastructure, momentary synchronization patterns suggesting dimensional boundary instability extending beyond dungeon environment into surface structures. This concerning development validated compressed timeline assessments while raising additional considerations regarding convergence progression potentially exceeding even accelerated prediction models. The operational situation had entered critical phase where preparation time contracted even as implementation requirements expanded, circumstances demanding both flexibility and precision within increasingly constrained parameters. Yet the day's developments had provided unexpected resources alongside confirmation of theoretical concerns, balanced outcome creating cautious optimism regarding potential respo. NSE effectiveness despite accelerating threat progression. Tomorrow would begin combat application phase of AZA's hybrid training, crucial development stage determining whether theoretical integration could translate into practical capability application within compressed timeline requirements. The Sword Princess had demonstrated exceptional adaptability thus far, but combat integration represent the fundamental challenge beyond perception enhancement or elemental affinity development. Whether student or teacher would prove adequate to the accelerating challenge remained uncertain. Yet Necessit Y had transformed their initially reluctant arrangement into crucial operational component, the sword and the sage representing potential defense against interdimensional threat beyond conventional response capabilities. Time alone would determine if their improvised alliance proved sufficient against convergence progression accelerating beyond even their most conservative estimates. For now, preparation continued with renewed urgency, combat applications developing alongside alliance resources within compressed timeline that left increasingly limited margin for error or adjustment. The Diamond's ional boundary continued its progressive deterioration, oblivious to human efforts mounting against its collapse. Somewhere deep within the dungeon, the Kagaya fragment gathered strength while influencing evolutionary development throughout connected ecosystems. The convergence advanced toward critical threshold where separate realities would merge with catastrophic consequences for both worlds. Against this interdimensional threat, unlikely allies gathered resources and developed capabilities transcending conventional response parameters. Whether their improvised efforts would prove sufficient remained uncertain. Yet the alternative, passive acceptance of inevitable convergence, represented unacceptable concession neither the sword nor the sage would consider while possibility of intervention remained. Tomorrow would begin another phase in their accelerated preparation, combat integration developing hybrid methodology addressing interdimensional threat through unprecedented capability combination. Until then, analysis continued alongside preparation, operational readiness developing against increasingly compressed timeline with characteristic determination that had defined both they are separate journeys and emerging collaborative path. Chapter 3 End. The End. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Remember to subscribe and like this video. See you in the next video.